way, so you know what I mean?
Right, folks, it's time. Fun's over. Have a different kind of fun.
You're mean.
Yeah, I gave you an extra 5 minutes. Come on. All right, here we are, have the Policy Committee Subcommittee for tonight's discussion, continued discussion of our RTA. It's Thursday, March 21st, 2024, a little after 6. And could we have roll call, Collie, please?
Meg Bonke.
Here.
Lori Hayes.
Here.
Jason Graham.
Here.
Janet Holmes.
Here.
Will McIntosh.
Here.
Drew Mullins.
Here.
Monica Gary. Present. Marcy Parker. Bob Schneider. Crystal Vanucci. Chris Yakubowski.
Here.
David Brown. Deontay Diggs.
Present.
Pamela Young. Jacob Lane. Gerald Childress. Kathy Coffey. Joe Stainsby. And from Caroline and King George counties, Kathy Bender.
Here.
Sully Sullins.
Here.
Jeffrey Black. Nancy Long.
Is there anyone online?
Just Al Watkins, sorry, C-Tech.
Oh, okay.
I believe we will be joined online by Stephen Miner from Federal Highways, I think.
And I think Bob mentioned you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I know that one of our colleagues, Supervisor Vanucci, was planning to be here, but then was called away for an award that one of her citizens was receiving tonight at a Park and Rec meeting. So she had to skip. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Ian. Looks like we've got moving right into question number 3.
Thank you. The questions, instead of making slides and slides about slides, I thought that just pretty I just put the questions in the actual agenda. So there you have them. What are the options for the makeup of an RTA board? How would an RTA prioritize projects to fund or support? Please, can we have examples of what this funding split would look like? And what would happen if we had no more projects to fund? So we've tried to answer those systematically. Some of the answers are very concrete. Some of them are more speculative because it's a what if question and we had to sort of make some suggestions. So if we could go straight into number 4, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Madam, number 4, makeup of the RTA board. What we've done here is to, thank you, if we could get the next slide. What we've done here is to look at the makeups of the boards of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, which is Richmond, the Hampton Roads, Transportation Advisory Committee, I think it's called, or something like that. Accountability. What? Accountability Commission. That's right. Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission. They changed their name after they got sued and declared illegal, so they had to start again. So they changed their name, which is why it's such a funny name. And then the I-81 corridor, which is a funny animal. It's not technically the same kind of thing as an RTA, but it has the same effect. They raise money, they spend it on the corridor on big projects, and they have an advisory committee, which is not quite the same as an RTA. RTA is actual power. You can decide, vote on what projects to spend money on, and you can spend the money. Whereas the I-81 corridor is a little different. Their board is actually, we discovered, the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So they don't have a board, they have an advisory committee, which is a little bit of a different animal. But anyway, whatever. So we looked at those. Next slide. So this is the Northern Virginia version. So they have the chief elected official from each of the 9 jurisdictions in their planning district. And there you have them, the counties. 2 delegates appointed by the Speaker of the House, 1 state senator appointed by the Committee for Transportation, I believe, 2 citizen members appointed by the governor, which is an unusual one. None of the other RTAs have that, but this particular one does. And one of those 2 appointed by the governor has to be from the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Sort of a very unusual thing to do, but that's what they have. And the chief elected officer of 1 town, but because they have like 4 towns, it rotates, right? So they sort of rotate, but that person isn't voting. And then they have ex officio members, which is the Commissioner of Highways, which is effectively the head of VDOT, and the DRPT head, and the chief elected officer of 1 town in a county,
Moving on.
Chief elected.
So the Central Virginia Transportation Authority has got members, one member from each of the localities that you've got in planning districts. One member of the House of Delegates that lives in planning district 15, one member of the Senate who lives within planning district 16, and one member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board residing within planning district 16. Then they have non-voting ones, which is the usual suspects, the DRPT rep, Commissioner for Highways. They have the Port of Virginia as an extra one, the Greater Richmond Transit Company, so their local transit operation, the CEO of Metropolitan Transportation Authority, that's a slightly different authority to fund, and then anyway, those are the members. Again, some of those, they're the only transportation authority that has that particular one, right? There's some unusual ones there, but the ex officio ones don't have a vote. They're there to give advice and to, you know.
Ian,
Yes, ma'am.
it's interesting that the executive director of the Port of Virginia is on this one. I can see that on Hampton Roads, but on Central Virginia.
Yeah, it was added
That's a
in,
little odd.
was added in 2021, so it wasn't there, that individual wasn't there before.
So you get Port Richmond.
Oh, I gotcha. Port of Richmond, okay.
It's a later addition that they just sort of plopped it on.
I'd
in
like to know
2021.
how that got in there. What was? the
Let them do
purpose?
them.
It's, you know, Northern Virginia has a weird one, they have a weird one, everybody's got an unusual
Okay,
sort of thing.
seems like a typo there, but
I would bet,
sure.
I would bet it has something to do though with the freight movement and the need. There's always a lot of discussion of bridges that can accommodate the freight movement and rail crossings and things like that. I would bet with just having representation to make sure that that's thought of, because all of that has to come from the port, you know, almost to the bridge.
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Great, so that's that one. Next one. So this is Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability is the word I keep forgetting, Accountability Commission. So again, 15 members from the cities, 4 from counties, 5 from the Virginia General Assembly. That's quite a high number. But remember, this is the authority that was cancelled because it was declared illegal. So I think they've brought a higher number of, I'm guessing, right? But I'm guessing they brought a higher number of General Assembly members to help them deal with all of the mess they got in. And then they have the usual ex officio members, VDOT, DRPT, the Port Authority, and the Commonwealth Transportation Board representative on there. The I-81 corridor, as I said, is not a board, it's an advisory committee. And they have the chairs of the
Planning.
those different planning districts, because it's all the way down the ribbon of the highway, right? So there's multiple planning districts involved, 4 state delegates, and they've specified those. It's you know, it's got to come from that district, for example. 3 senators, 3 members of the board representing those particular construction districts, and then they have the Commissioner of Highways and the Director of DRPT. So again, some that you've seen before, and then some sort of unusual ones again. But this is a corridor type of thing. It's not a you know, the whole county. The commission only presides over that corridor that goes up and down the highway, which is why it's got sort of some unusual things. So that's the membership of the board, right? You'll remember this slide, you've seen it before, but 6 months ago, when we started this discussion, or maybe longer ago. So for the new members, this is what we were discussing last year, but no other than me just putting a slide up there, it didn't get legs, nobody voted on this. But we suggested that you might want 2 representatives per jurisdiction. 1 representative from the Virginia House, 1 from the Senate, and a representative from the CTB. And then the others as ex officio non-voting, the VDOT, the DRPT, the FAMPO administrator. You can cancel that if you want, but I just looked at this list and thought you don't have a planner on there. And then GWRC executive director, which today would be Chip, but whoever has that position in future. But those are all non-voting, just for advice giving kind of purposes. So that's the sort of suggestion last year. Next slide. So when I finished doing the presentation, feel free to suggest what you think, because tonight we put this as an item for discussion. What you'd like to have on the board, and literally, you know, there's no rule. There's only like, that's what other people do. Told you, pick whatever you want. But there's an open page there. You can fill it. Next
I'd like to
slide.
have the Falmouth, Port of Virginia. It used to be a port back in
Can
the
we see a
day.
show of hands for that one?
Yeah.
That's your riding canoe though.
Yeah.
All right, so now the second part of this is how do they vote? And so I've literally copied and pasted the text of the law or the bylaws of each institution, so that it's not my opinion of how they do it, but it's what they actually say they do. They each have 1 vote in the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. To pass anything, they need a vote of 2/3 of the members, and this is important because you'll see what we were discussing previously had a higher threshold than this, actually. And some folks want it even higher, so you need to think through this. But they have a 2/3 of the members present and 2/3 of the representatives of the counties and cities embraced by the authority, and at least 2/3 of the population embraced by the authority. However, let's just carry on reading because there's a wrinkle in the way they do this. No vote shall fail because 1 jurisdiction, and there in the bold at the bottom is a key phrase, whose representative sole negative vote caused the facility or service to fail to meet the population criteria. So all of those criteria apply, except 1 person can't vote no and stop every other project. You got to have more than 1 no vote to kill something. That's their version. Next slide. Hampton Roads, again, 1 vote, except the disbursement of funds. They separate out the way you vote for disbursement of funds in a slightly different way. So it shall require the affirmative vote of 2/3. Again, they've got the 2/3 of voting members or their designees, and 2/3 of the total chief elected officers and elected officials who represent the counties and cities embraced by the planning district, and whose counties and cities include at least 2/3 of the population embraced by the commission. And there's that same clause again, no vote to fund a facility within the county or city whose representative cast the sole negative vote will fail to meet the criteria. So again, they've got this thing about 1 grumpy person can't stop everybody else from proceeding. So there, next slide. However, look at this. This is the wrinkle I was getting to just now. Look at this wrinkle. And you got to think through this before you realize what's going on here. So they've got all those different criteria for voting for anything in the Hampton Roads Authority, except when it comes to money. When it comes to money, they make it simple. 1 man, 1 vote, and you just get 2/3 of the vote. That's weird to me because you would think that the money is one of the most important, if not the most important thing, and that's the one that has the lowest threshold in Hampton Roads. So if they have to vote for a change to the bylaws, or if they have to vote for whether or not they should have sandwiches, you've got to get 2/3 of this and 2/3 of that and 2/3 of this other, and a whole lot of criteria. But when it comes to money, no, it's simple. 2/3 of the vote, done. So that's a bit of a wrinkle. I don't know why there's a higher threshold for everything except money, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what they have.
Will?
Thanks, Madam Chair. What does that mean? Members of the commission, what's that final phrase.
So to fund a transportation authority, you have to have taxes to fund it.
Right.
So you count the 2/3 based on the representatives from the people who've been taxed. In other words, other members who have voting rights on the board, but who are not representing a jurisdiction. Like, for example, the CTG member, they're not delegated by the county of
Understood.
X.
Okay. Yeah.
So they don't count towards the
So they're saying
2/3.
that means just jurisdiction, 2/3 of the jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction members have to vote 2/3 in favor of it to fund anything.
So as many as 2/3, representing 2/3 of the tax base.
No.
Which was confusing, but
No.
okay, I understand.
It's just the eligible members, and the eligible members on taxes are those that represent the tax-paying jurisdictions. Next slide. CVTA. Okay, again, votes of the elected, chief elected officers. Based on, they're weighed based on the population. So this one is again different. They have got weighted voting by population, right? It's not one man, one vote. In some cases, it's one person, 3 votes, or 2 votes, or 1 vote. Sometimes, at a superficial level, this sounds like a good idea. At a deeper level, the difficulty here is getting you all around this table to agree who's going to get the 4 and who's going to get the 3 and who's going to get the 2 and who's going to get the 1. And you very welcome to have that argument, but I really privately hope and pray you don't ask me to try and get you all to agree on that, because I think that's going to be hard, because you're going to get some jurisdictions not wanting to be overshadowed by other jurisdictions and who gets what. So I get real nervous, not by implementing this, but by getting those affected to agree to the number. Everybody's going to want just that 1 more. And then I have to sit there and pull my hair out because I don't know how we get agreement on that. It's quite hard to do that, but we're not done yet, because there are some things we put in the proposals we looked at last year, which are different, but also achieve a higher threshold spending money. But I just want you to point this out. I want to point this out to you. So the big boys with the higher populations get 4 votes. Then those are a little bit smaller get 3 votes. Then those a little bit smaller get 2 votes. And then some of them only get 1 vote. And I bet the people who only get 1 vote do not like that at all, because they get worried that they're never going to get a project funded in their jurisdiction because they only have 1 vote. That's what worries me about this model, is that I'm going to have you all wanting to kill me if I try and propose this. So I never propose this. However, some people feel that we should do this. So I'm not hiding it from you. I'm putting it in front of you and you can all think about it. That's what they do in Richmond.
All right, hang on, I think Will had a,
I was just gonna observe too, that doesn't account for population change. Written into the statute that way. You know, if Charles City County develops and gets bigger, population, they get trapped, right, with it, because you'd have to go back to the
And then like,
Federal Assembly to change that.
and then like Congress, you have a fight, right? Every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that's easy.
What is the state that's got like very few senators and congressmen, and when the population just passes a certain threshold, then they got to juggle the numbers because.
That's every 10 years anyway. That's actually written into the law.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's the kind of thing that would start to happen here, is that you have to keep reassessing, and it's messy. It can be done. They're doing it in Richmond.
so I guess my question would be, if you look at that model, just, I'm not hitting, I like it or I don't like it. I would ask the question, we would have to look at what have they accomplished since they've been there? What have their votes looked like? What are, reading their minutes and looking at kind of the whole big picture. Has it been effective for them or has it not? And how have the smaller communities fared? I mean, well, just at a glance, some people would say, especially if you're smaller, well, I don't really like that. I get it. Okay. But then I would ask that, play devil's advocate and say, well, let's look at it and let's look at what they've done over the last 3 years and has it worked for them? Where have the rubs been within and the disagreements? And I guess I'd just like to have more information rather than just
Sure.
throwing it out the window.
Sure, I'm not.
But that's just me.
I'm not throwing it out. I'm putting it there in front of you. I know one of the things they had a difficulty with in Richmond is over transit in this authority, because they coded into their thing that they're going to give 15% of their income to transit every year.
Mhm.
That is at the same time good and bad. It's good that you put aside some money for transit on a regular basis. It's bad because you can't change the number and you're stuck with it. So those who want more transit, they're stuck with it. Those who want less transit, they're stuck with it. So I think we should put something towards transit in the total package, but I'm not all that excited about encoding it in the legislation because then you're stuck with it.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Monica, I saw her hand up
Thank
first and then you.
Quick, yeah, to that point, I remember we had this discussion last time. I went around the table and then, not that there was any decision on it, but that we could lump that in under another category and still provide resources for transit, and it wouldn't be restricted.
And wouldn't we be able to maybe have a range for transit? Does it have to be a specific percentage, or could we say it could be, 8 to 15 or whatever the number might be?
Yeah, I think you should be careful of too many rules in the legislation. If you put it in the bylaws,
Right,
then from time to time you can amend them. But if you put it in the legislation, then you're pretty stuck, because then when
Right.
you don't like it anymore, now
have
you
to
gotta
go
go back
back.
and get however many hundred people to vote to change it. That's the worry.
sure.
Well, and I
Okay,
guess
Lori?
that, just to piggyback on that, that's what I'm asking. Why can't you in the legislation put the makeup of this or whatever you want to say will be readjusted every whatever time period to reflect changes in population or changes in,
I'm sure you can. with
so
Congress
you
does.
wouldn't necessarily be,
Having to come back.
right. I mean, if you wrote it that way, then every 3 years or whatever you want to say, you would readjust that. Kind of like what VRE does with membership when they do their 1-day thing, and then that determines your makeup of your board for the next year.
You would have to just specify whose population numbers you're gonna believe, because there's the Weldon Cooper Center, there's the Census Bureau, there's the American Community Survey. So you just gotta put that in. When you're gonna use a population determination, you've got to say whose population numbers and how often are you going to reassess. So you just gotta work that in, because otherwise people start to play games. Oh, wait, if we argue, we can get the population redone and then we can get an extra vote or something, and that's just
Well, then maybe that needs to be determined, who would be the one that you're gonna go with.
yes. So you put that, you must put all, if you're gonna go this route, you must put all that in and give yourself a way to review it, because it gets fights happen about this.
Sure. Any other questions right now?
Okay,
Okay.
next slide. So this is when I said there are other ways of doing this is what the Senate bill from last year proposed. And it's got a little bit of sense to it, right? So there's no weighted voting by population the way that Central
Right.
Virginia does it. But what they do have is a much higher threshold. So instead of 2/3, this requires 4/5 of the sorry, I always say this wrong. Representatives of 4/5 of the population have to vote yes before you can spend money. It's higher than the 2/3, right? So it's a higher threshold. So before you spend, so what this does, if you go this route instead, is it forces you to build more consensus, because you can't. Now, you can even go further. If this is even not enough, you could say 4 out of 5 jurisdictions have to agree. If all 5 jurisdictions are part of it, or however many jurisdictions, be 6, and maybe Orange County should. But frankly, there's a good case to be made for why Orange County should join as well, because frankly, they're going to build 2,400 and how many houses on your
A lot,
border.
yeah,
They're going to put traffic
Oh,
on
how
Route
many?
3. We're going to have to upgrade Route 3. Why shouldn't they also pay?
right.
Right? Alternatively, you can get money from those folks by a sales tax, a gas tax, or something else when they come into your region. So if they come into Spotsylvania to shop, maybe you can get it by a sales tax or something. But anyway, the point is, however many, you could have this as either 4/5 the representatives of 4% of the population is what's proposed, or you could have 4 out of 5 jurisdictions must say yes, which builds consensus. You have to agree before you spend the money. So you can't, it's unwise to make it 5 out of 5 because there's always somebody who's cross, right? So you should make it 4 out of 5 because that, 4 out of 4/5 of the population is representatives, or if you're really worried about each other, then make it 4 out of 5 jurisdictions, right? Because then that's pretty locked down. Then it doesn't actually matter about the weighted population voting because you really have to reach some more consensus before you can spend money.
All right, Lori,
So
I think has a question.
this does not take into consideration the amount of taxes that are generated by each jurisdiction then.
Not in the voting. But when you're picking projects to approve, would consider that issue.
Because
Just
I think-
remember, none of these,
No, go ahead.
okay, none of these authorities put the central pot of money divided up by jurisdiction. It goes into a central pot and they pick projects based on criteria, not based on who put the money in this month.
Right.
But the other, either the 50 or the 40% balance of the money goes directly to the jurisdiction based on where it's raised. So you get, let's say, half or however much, 40% of your money back immediately, straight back to you. It doesn't get into the central pot. The balance that gets into the central pot, you have to agree on regional projects, and you need 4/5 of the representatives of the population to approve any project before you fund it. So this is the alternative method that was in the Senate bill. There is no additional weighting by population because you're already asking the 4/5. You built in the population in the top line. 4/5 of the representatives of 4/5 of the population have to agree before we money.
So I'm sorry. So if I'm looking at this local total,
We're going to get to that now.
okay, because I just, if this is this local taxes?
This is. Can we pause
Yeah.
for a second? Because
But it has something to do with the voting is what
Yes,
I'm
that's
saying.
fine. You're very welcome to just have this
Okay.
made next.
Okay,
presentation.
okay, all
Now,
right.
don't forget your point.
I
We
won't.
want to make it, but we want to explain this chart before you jump to any. conclusions.
Okay,
So
Yeah, I want to hear.
if we have 2 jurisdiction representatives, the question that came up is then who gets the vote? So when we calculate the population, we would divide the population by however many members from that jurisdiction are on the board. So if you have 1 person, it's easy. We don't have to do a calculation. If you have 2 members, they each get half the vote of the jurisdiction, half of the weight of the population, right? That's how you would do that. But this is less messy. But you may not like it. It says also that a single jurisdiction can veto, but only if the project's in their jurisdiction. So 1 person can veto in this model, but they can only veto local projects. They can't veto in King George if they are a representative of Spotsylvania.
It will.
But to clarify, thanks, Madam Chair, really only Spotsylvania and Stafford would be able to veto because they're the only ones that are more than 20% of the more than 1/5 of the overall population, right? So if there was a project in the city of Fredericksburg and the other 4 jurisdictions agreed that it wanted to happen, but Fredericksburg didn't want it to happen, we voted against it, we would not hit that. We don't constitute 1/5 of the population, so we would then be unable to veto within a jurisdiction.
Yes.
And only Spotsylvania and Stafford could, right?
No. There is an additional separate line in the bill which says
Okay.
that no one jurisdiction can veto a project in their own, that a single vote of any member that has the power to veto cannot veto projects outside of their jurisdiction, but implicitly is that they can veto a project in their jurisdiction.
Okay, that's not how I read it.
Yeah, the second one
The
up
way-
there, a single jurisdiction
it's-
might only veto projects
In their own jurisdiction.
But only if they're more than 1/5 of the population?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't have a weight.
Okay,
Any jurisdiction can veto a project in their own
okay,
jurisdiction.
as long as that's clear.
It's a separate, Those two things are both true, but they're separate, they're not connected to.
So
Okay,
if I,
Monica,
Thank you. Just to clarify, that means solely in their jurisdiction, not a regional project that overlaps their jurisdiction.
Well, the way I read the Senate bill, it says, for example, I'll give you an example. The river crossing bridge, you have to get both Stafford and the city of Fredericksburg in this particular case to both agree to have it built. Any one of them can veto it, right? Because there is construction happening on their land. So any of those two jurisdictions can veto it, even though the project is a regional project and it covers multiple jurisdictions.
Okay.
so I think, yeah, okay, Jason.
thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think the issue with this one, to kind of go back to what Will was saying and using Monica's example, I mean, in this case, Spotsylvania would be able to veto it because they are more than 1/5 of the population.
They can't, so
Any,
Judge,
Sure.
we can write it any way we want.
oh, no, I agree. And so I think what we're doing is, I think we're saying that the fourth, fifth population one might not be the best way to go. That's it.
Well,
I will tell
if
you,
it's in your jurisdiction, though, you should have control over that.
Yes.
You shouldn't be bullied into doing something.
Oh, 100% that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, vetoing things in
Let's
your
refer
own
that.
jurisdiction, yes, but letting one locality have veto power over things that happen in a different one.
so
That's the.
That's part of the population that you're.
Right.
Well, but then I would argue, though, that if you look at the chart, and I'm sorry to jump out order. If Spotsy is paying for it, which we are the biggest financial contributor to this whole RTA. Isn't it fair for us to have a little bit more say than to just be outvoted by everybody else and say, we want to do this, thank you for the money, and the only way we could stop it is if it was in our jurisdiction. And we don't want it in our jurisdiction, but yet all the projects get done in every other jurisdiction, so that population part has to be in there. Because if not, we could just be the piggy bank for the whole RTA, and we have no way to stop it, and we get outvoted, and every project gets done everywhere else but ours.
Well, I think, if I may respond, I think that's a little too conspiratorial. I think that would require a great deal of
It will
collusion.
happen. It will happen, because the worst things do happen.
Yeah. They do.
They do, because, and,
do. Yeah.
Great act.
and you gotta make sure that we, because I would never do that to Fredericksburg. I would never put a road right through the middle of your city and say, tough. But if it's not written in there, it might happen.
No, but then we would have veto power, because it comes through our jurisdiction.
so that, yeah, so that last,
I'm just saying, write in the things that we need to ensure.
that last.
I agree.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that we do, I just didn't want one locality to be able to veto things that are happening elsewhere in the region. Even though the rest of the region agrees that it's good for the region.
True, but if that one locality is the majority of the tax revenue.
Yeah.
There should be some, because if not, because it could go the other way, where you have that, so you're saying one county, let's just say it's Spotsylvania for an example. And we say, we don't want your project, we don't like your project, King George, whatever you come up with, we're not gonna do yours, and we can veto it because of that. Conversely, you can also have all of the other jurisdictions come together and go, we want all these projects, and Spotsy's project gets done, 15 years from now. But yet we're the largest financial contributor to it. Is that fair to us to not have a way to say, hang on, at least move our project up to number 2?
If I may.
Oh, and this is good this is the conversation that we need to have. This is exactly why we have these subcommittee meetings.
Thank you. I think the comment about the worst things can happen, of course, that is, but I also think what comes around goes around. And there's.
But we shouldn't be setting up something to get back at each other.
No, and I don't think I think what we're doing.
A good thing that came around.
Well, no, but I think I guess what I'm saying is that, by creating this RTA and I think we all are coming to an agreement that, regional cooperation is, for the good of the region is stuff that's going to need to happen. I mean, and just to, lay all cards out on the table, if we find out, that the Harrison Road interchange on 95 is still one of the best ways to reduce traffic, yes, I'm going to want money to go toward that. If we find out that one of the best ways, especially in the case of a disaster, is the Western Network in Stafford to give us another north-south route, I'm absolutely, going to vote for that if I had a vote on this RTA. I mean, I don't foresee yes, just because I can't foresee some sort of nefarious, underhanded things doesn't mean they can't happen. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we allow for any one locality to essentially have its own veto power, then I'm concerned about the spirit of regionalism in the first place.
Very true, but let's just say the Western Bypass, if done, will then bring a big economic development project to Stafford that Spotsy is also trying to woo. But yet our tax dollars are going to enhance your network to then get that economic development project there. How is that fair to us that our tax dollars are going to then help you guys land a big project?
Because regionally, it was the safest option for us, were there to be a disaster.
I think, Fredericksburg would have the same, if Fredericksburg could make that same argument, and, but that, we recognize that this is good for the region and getting a little bit out of the tit for tat, trying to keep score type of mentality.
Well, I'm not trying to keep score. What I'm doing is I'm trying to think about where we have come from, because I've been here for a while, and how things have sort of fallen apart, and not let that happen.
No, I agree. I think what I wanted, I think what I would say to that are some of the specific personalities that, contributed to that.
We'll be back.
Personalities come and go.
Right.
And so we can't prevent people from being not great with each other. I agree.
Mhm.
I mean, but again, the entire spirit of regionalism falls apart if you have the wrong people at the table. Nothing else even matters at that point. If you have a table full of selfish, short-sighted people, then not a single project's ever going to get funded, and I don't care what bylaws we write.
Okay, Will, and then Drew. And then, Ian will.
Sorry.
No, that was good.
And then.
Monica. Okay,
So I think I am scraping the barnacles off of my memory from last month in the presentation from the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, but they had a set of rules written in that required a certain degree of parity of distribution of the funds amongst the jurisdictions, as my recollection was, right?
That is true.
And so to me, like these details of governance and, who can veto what and sort of, right? Like, I think that matters less if we also create a separate set of rules to ensure, because the real concern here is that, like, I think speaking for a smaller jurisdiction, right, is that the bigger jurisdictions will be able to gang up and direct funds in this 4/5 models, and will leave the littler jurisdictions with the littler jurisdictions out, right? But if we thank you. Thank you. If we had a separate set of rules that ensured that the distribution, and my recollection of it was that it wasn't precise, right? But it was within a range, right? It's sort of a roughly equal distribution of funds relative to the revenue contributed by each jurisdiction. If we had that set of rules at the same time, then I think the governance structure matters less, right? Because then we don't end up with a situation where, the other jurisdictions can gang up on Spotsy and make sure they don't get their or that the bigger jurisdiction can veto Fredericksburg, and we aren't unable to get what we want because we're only less than a fifth of the population. So I think that those two things have to work together.
all right, Drew.
Yeah, just observation. I think that maybe.
No, I don't know if we're at the numbers yet. You might be ahead in the score.
No, okay, maybe so, but
Okay, well, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair.
It seems like others have cheated and looked too, so it's all right. You looked at your
I'm basing-
basket
yeah.
before you were supposed to.
I won't reference the, I won't go out of order and reference the numbers, but listening to the dialogue observation, this is probably why those other jurisdictions weighted their voting members, having 4 votes, 3 votes, 2 votes, 1 vote. I could see,
Only one of them did that.
yeah, I understand, but maybe it was this type of discussion, the concerns is why that, the genesis of that. I'm just saying that as an observation, potentially, right? Second, to your point about personalities and stuff, you avoid that by baking it into the parliamentary process. So you don't have to worry about personalities, right?
It's true.
As much,
Right, and that, to Will's point, I think, yeah, if you get that,
yeah.
the numbers can balance.
Last point I would say is that this only deals with first order effects. So this only deals with the project and the 2 entities or 3 entities that are actually dealing with the project. It doesn't deal with second downstream orders of effects that dissenters might have as a real concern, because they're not in the footprint of whatever the project is, but they're going to be impacted. Someone used the example of Caroline or whatever, doing an adjoining county, building a bunch of homes right on the border, and yet not being subject to anything because they're outside of the border town of the county. I'm just throwing that out as observations to how we think about going forward, because if you're just looking at it binary process, a binary kind of thing, of voting and whose footprint's affected, I think it lends itself to what Chris is talking about, which I'm not supposed to know about because of the numbers, right? But who really is the engine behind, the major contribution, so.
I don't think it's cheating to say that Spotsy is larger than the city or county or Carolina.
No, that's not.
Oh, okay, hang
Yeah.
on, Monica, and then I'm gonna give Ian a chance.
Okay, thank you so much. So, what I'm hearing is something that we deal with, all of us on our respective boards and in our localities. And it's that, it would be easy for me if there's something that, may go to Supervisor Diggs' districts that I want to say, well, I want that for me. Or because, Dr. Young's district maybe generates more revenue because it's Garrisonville, that maybe we should just keep it all for roads in her district. But we can't do that because we're working together. And so I think that if we can come to a place where we can look at this, where we're actually cooperating, just like we have to do on our boards regionally, and say, we're doing this for the benefit of the region. And it's very hard to do that, but we exist because people work together to put together a country and states and localities. And like, if we're gonna expand this out and do this, if we're gonna do it, then it has to be, we're doing it regionally, not what am I getting for Stafford? What am I getting for a quiet district? You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to kind of bring us back to that. And I think we're starting to get there in the conversation. It's hard. And there'll be people who come in and out of these, of this, RTA, if we set it up, that some may be very selfish, if the public is listening, pay attention and vote. It's the best that we have is elect good people that will make those good decisions. But we are all doing this together for the good of the entire region, not just to say, I want to get everything for Stafford, and I'm not going to roll you over. We have to act out of, the goodness of, and morality of where we stand in our own positions to not abuse a neighboring locality, just like we shouldn't abuse our neighboring supervisor or council member. So I just thought that was something to kind of bring us back to.
Okay, Ian, and then.
So just want to bring this back to some facts, right? I have no opinion on this. You make up your own opinion.
I'd say every human has an opinion.
Okay, all right. I have a private opinion, but I'm not going to tell you. But let me tell you, some numbers matter, and we were going to explain this all to you, but you kind of are jumping the gun. So let me just put this to you.
In the future, just keep.
Right.
Yeah.
Although it was also
First
in
thing.
here.
First thing, I'd like to see a show of hands of who here around this table thinks that the majority of the shopping that's done in Central Park is from only people in the city of Fredericksburg.
Not even close.
We all know
So
that.
unfortunately, Chris, we're good friends, right? But your first premise is the problem. The first premise is that's our money, right? That's what you were saying. It's our money. Actually, it's not. If you look at this chart, the two things that actually bring in big money are sales tax and gas tax. And we've zeroed out some of the gas tax, but frankly, those are just the facts. You can look at every one of these transportation authorities. The big money comes in from sales tax or gas tax. The other things are nice to have, but they don't bring big enough money, right? So the people who shop in Central Park are not Fredericksburg residents. So the people who shop in Spotsylvania Town Center are not Spotsylvania residents. The people who shop along I-95 corridor, God knows where they come from. The people who buy gas in Caroline County are trucks driving up and down the main thoroughfares, I-95, 302, etc. They're not necessarily Caroline County residents, but they're bringing in $1.7 million of gas tax, right? But they're not your residents. It's not your people. And de facto, then it's not your money. So just want to knock that one on the head a little bit. Some of the money that's raised in your jurisdiction is from your residents, but there's a big chunk from other people because this is not housing taxes. This is not what you raise from your residents in property taxes. Those are your residents. They're nobody else's residents, they're yours. And those taxes directly come to you and they come from properties in your jurisdiction. But a lot of these taxes, for example, the state allocation, which is $15 million a year, that could come from people in Shenandoah. It's thrown in the central pot, and the legislation of the gentleman in the Senate was to take 15 million of that and give it to this region because we are upset that they took our grantors tax and gave it to Hampton Roads. So the problem here is that you must be careful of getting too fixated on whose taxes it is, because you shop in Spotsylvania, I shop in Central Park, but I live in Northern Virginia. You shop God knows where. It's the sales tax. It's the sales tax.
Just don't know.
Is a very, very, very bad way to say where those people live. And the gas tax is an even worse way to say where those people live. So these people are crossing jurisdictions to purchase whatever, purchase gas. And the other big one, the state allocation, probably not even money that's raised in our jurisdictions, it's from somewhere else. So it's actually a minority of the funds that come from your county specifically. It's all mixed up and blended already before you start. And then the second thing is actually, even if this was true and it all was raised in Spotsylvania, it's actually not the majority of the money. It's maybe 35% or something, maybe at the most 40%. So at least 60% of it is raised outside of Spotsylvania. It's not the majority. So just the numbers don't mean that it's all Spotsylvania's money. I just want to clarify that that's not actually true.
All right,
Since I was
well, Kathy, I think was next.
Yes, well, I'm just gonna
the
make a very
sentiment is
small
fine.
point.
It's just the numbers I'm just disputing. Yes.
And since we're being, so if King George and Caroline will be part of this, one of the things, they need to be voting members of FAMPO. Because a non-voting member is not very fair if they're not part of FAMPO. I'm just laying it out there.
Can I ask you a question? May I ask a
Mhm.
question?
Sure.
If you are a full voting member with the same rights as every other jurisdiction in the RTA, is that not okay? The reason I'm saying this is that they're two separate institutions. For example, if you vote for an RTA, I'm not the head of that RTA as the chief staff.
Well, I understand that,
It's a
but
separate institution,
if you
and
have, it's the Frederick area metropolitan, some of these decisions in Smart still comes through FAMPO. If King George is gonna be lumped in, they should also be part of that organization also. I'm just throwing that
Well,
out
if
there.
I remember,
I'm not arguing
You-
against that.
you
I'm
guys-
just saying that they are two separate institutions.
right, but you guys weren't far from a population standpoint from being a member of
And I
FAMPO.
don't know what the
Do we
population.
know where that stands?
It's not, technically, it's not about population, it's about how close your urban area is. And that's a very complicated thing, and it's
I
gonna,
was just throwing it out there.
Okay, that's something we can look into. Ian can.
but you can legally join FAMPO if FAMPO and the governor agree. There's no
I'm
population.
just throwing it out there as a.
Sure. Okay, I have a couple more down here. Lori?
So Ian, while I understand what you're saying, that everybody kind of mixes around in everybody else's swimming pool, right? The fact is that we are still the ones that are responsible for all the things that go into that tax base, right? The infrastructure that goes to build the mall or Kalahari or anything else. So while those people may not be from our region, it is what we are generating. So you know, I get what you're saying, but it's kind of split in half. I mean, we could go down that road all day long. Wait till Kalahari comes. And then people from
What's
the
that?
Midwest
Or-
might,
or-
or
or
Buc-ee's, you know, I mean,
Oh,
if you wanna, you know, if we wanna go down that road, then we should be writing checks to everywhere where these people come from.
Well, you're
So-
taking their money.
But-
That's the point of.
But do you know what I mean? This is about the fact that this is revenue that we're generating, or our businesses are generating. And so therefore, it's a legitimate concern.
Right. Okay, I think Monica and then Chris.
Yeah, I just had a question to follow up from Kathy's comments. If we could just look at how FAMPO and this RTA might interact functionally. I think that's something to just pay attention to ahead of time, but regarding what she brought up, like what kind of things.
So what happens in Richmond is that the MPO, the PDC, and the RTA for the region, they share staff.
Mhm.
They all operate in the same office. And so the same staff are doing the work for one or the other, except for the director of the RTA has to be specifically
Allocated.
delegated
Designated.
to, whatever the word is, to the RTA, and the head of the PDC has to be the executive director of the PDC, and the MPO head has to be the head of the MPO. But the staff are actually shared in a general pool. They're not completely siloed, and the staff of the MPO does work for the RTA on a reimbursement basis. So there's a complete cooperative relationship at a staff level. The boards have to be separate because they're federal rules about voting.
But just on a point that like, I ran into something like this today. There's something I'm hoping to get done soon to get more money for our schools that Supervisor Bonke and I discussed for Richmond. Sometimes you run into things and you have that red tape, you know, so for example, like the RTA wants to do something, but there's something FAMPO needs to address or change, but the members of the RTA don't have members on FAMPO, and so that inhibits their ability to affect whatever is being done, because now you have this other thing you have to move through, and those things happen all the time. So I'm willing to consider that and look at that. I think it's important because of how those functionally would interact, and as far as votes and decision making and things we might try to accomplish.
We pass a resolution to add King George or Caroline County to FAMPO. I then draft something and send it to the governor, and if the governor agrees to it and the FAMPO Policy Committee votes for it, it's a paperwork exercise. But in the past, there were all sorts of political things going on, which I was.
Okay, Chris and then Jason.
Yeah, since I started this whole thing, let me clarify. What I'm trying to do is avoid the past mistakes. And so the specificity of where the money comes from, let's get away from all that. In years past, there was a big economic development project that one jurisdiction was working with the state to actually get infrastructure improvements done, paid for by the state, so that they would win the ED project over us that was competing with it. That's wrong. And FAMPO actually voted against doing it. So, but we had to fight about that. So instead of us fighting about that in the future, which it will happen if there's not rules to prohibit those type of things, and bylaws, while they're good, we just changed the bylaws at FAMPO so that you couldn't stop the meeting from happening by just not showing up. Remember that?
Yes.
So how about we
The other way around, we didn't change them to fix that.
Yeah, we actually did.
We should have changed them to fix it.
Yeah.
Oh, so I can leave right now and we can't do anything?
Well, no, you can, because Laura's still here.
It's a subcommittee meeting. you can leave.
No, seriously, right down
Apparently
to,
I'm low.
right down to
was gonna say,
say,
Chris, you
if
feel left out?
Spotsylvania walked out of FAMPO, we couldn't carry on the meeting. Because we
Yeah.
didn't change that in the.
It ended up staying.
Well, we need to, or we needed to, because that was being used by different personalities, right? So what I'm saying is, we can address those things, we can recognize the things that will derail this in the future.
Yes.
And put into place things that will make those things difficult to happen.
Mhm.
And now we're not gonna foresee everything that will happen. 20 years from now, something will come up and, say, well, why didn't you write it this way? But what we need to do is, because you were talking about the 4/5.
Yes.
Spotsy could, stop other projects elsewhere. And I was just saying that if Spotsy did generate a lot of the majority of, or we're the biggest single producer.
Plurality.
Yeah. But the other thing to remember too is sales tax is going down. Our commercial is, the big boxes are going away, Central Park, all that, everything's changing. So we're relying upon that type of revenue many years in the future, and we don't know what the future holds. And that's why, one of the things I was gonna throw out here to everybody, and I don't even know if the state would go along with this, but why not, if the RTA, if we have 5 or 10 projects that we know we wanna do, and we all can come to agreement on that, why not ask for the state to set up the RTA to do those projects? And once those projects are complete, we can re-up the RTA. Why does it have to be
In perpetuity.
yes,
It'll
Okay.
never go.
Jason?
if it's
So,
written that way?
so a couple different rebuttals or responses. First with the 4/5 of the population, or 4/5 of the money, whichever way you're slicing it. I think let's just take PDC 16 and the amount of land that each locality holds. And even assuming the worst of everyone who may come after us, which is what we're, trying to do in this exercise, I still believe that it actually does not benefit the members of those jurisdictions to try to go around, and let's just keep using Spotsy as the example, because yes, they appear to be the largest of the retail tax, and we'll just assume right now that that's going to be the way it is for the foreseeable future. Spotsy will also have some of the greatest opportunities for congestion mitigation and other transportation opportunities that the rest of the region will benefit by, just as, again, using the Western network, not bypass, but the Western network and stuff like that, Enon and Centerport Parkway connectors benefit the entire region, regardless of whether they're in our specific localities. Having that north-south definitely benefits Spotsylvania residents, and I know you believe that too. So I think within the confines of this planning district, the idea that everybody would, start to turn on the largest contributor, I actually think would be actually outside of everyone's self-interest. So even taking that into account, I just don't foresee that as a possibility. So I'm still just not convinced of essentially giving one locality that veto rights. I'm all in favor of 4/5 of the jurisdictions needing to agree on something, but not 4/5 of the population, just for that. And then to the question about the time limit of the RTA itself, the nature of transportation planning, I worry, does not give us the opportunity to put a sunset on this. Because if you look at the amount of funds that are going to be needed for various projects, we could find ourselves in another situation where everything gets halted because of, let's say, another pandemic, God forbid. And then
Came up with that. Sorry.
and then we end up with another, situation where supply chains get completely hosed, and then inflation, rears its ugly head yet again. These types of scenarios could happen to the point where the sunset then becomes yet another hurdle in this issue, and I'm worried about trying to say that this RTA is going to solve a very set number of issues. Also because as the population continues to grow in this region, the issues that we may see, I think, are going to change as well. And I'm just a little skeptical that we'll be able to meet our goals if we, time box this.
Can I share one quick thing on that though, is that the Harrison Road connector, we were at our Transportation Committee meeting last week and Ian and John were there presenting the east-west orders.
Okay.
We had a gentleman who was on the board, our board, back in the late eighties, who kind of chuckled and said, "Oh, Harrison Road connector, we talked about that in the late eighties."
Yeah.
My point is, if we have a set number of projects, these things have been around. The Western in Stafford has been around as long as I paid attention to this stuff. All of these projects have been around that long. So the likelihood that we get all these done, and then we have a whole new group of projects. I just want to get these done. Why don't we focus on getting something accomplished, showing the taxpayers who are paying for this that, wow, look what we did and things are better. Then we move on from there. My fear is that what is going to happen is that this is going to, it's not going to raise enough revenue, number one. So then there's going to be another revenue source needed, or projects are going to drop. Priorities are going to move, and we're going to be sitting here, or people are going to be sitting here in 10 years talking about the exact same projects that we've been talking about for 30 years. Why don't we find a way to get these done, get it accomplished, and then at that point we can go forward from there. I just don't like something that is in perpetuity without a plan behind it. We say we have transportation needs in the future. We're still dealing with the transportation needs of 30 years ago.
Which is why I think the RTA is absolutely what we need to do now. I think the question then becomes, why weren't we able to deal with those things 30 years ago? And I think the answer to that was because we didn't have a regional approach or a way to raise the funds necessary to get there. This is that issue, and this is our way of preventing people in 2050 going, why did they not fix this back then? I think this is our opportunity to not be those people in the back chuckling, saying, oh yeah, we've had that problem for as long as I've been here.
All right, Will, and then Monica, and then actually I'm gonna go to you, Anna, since you haven't spoken yet.
I just had a question about when we're talking about in perpetuity. So what would preclude a jurisdiction from leaving the RTA at some time in the future? So they just can't. They just, once they're in, they're in.
And
And
it that way that they could opt out.
Only if they pass it that way.
That's what I'm saying.
like, so that's the
But they
deal,
still have to
like,
pass it, which
you would have to go through the
They have
General
not-
Assembly to
they don't.
leave.
That gets way.
The authority.
Right, well, and I would think that it would have something to do with if you're issuing bonds or debt and you've got long-term liabilities outstanding.
So just in terms of the process, to start one, the General Assembly has to move it. Because actually you're not taxing your residents with these taxes, they are. This is the state taxing, but allowing you to decide what to spend the money on, which is quite unique, right? Where else does the state tax the money and they give it to you to spend? Well, this is what they're doing. The state would be raising the taxes, not you. They'll be raising it in your jurisdiction, but you're not raising it. They're deciding to raise it.
Okay.
And then they're asking you on board to allocate that money to whatever projects you think locally are the most important. So if you wrap it up, and you can close them down, you go back to the General Assembly and say, hey, we've done what we set out to do, please close it down, and then they vote to close it. Then you start it the same way as you close it. The General Assembly starts with the General Assembly closes it.
Okay, Will, and then Monica.
Yeah, I just want to say on the issue of perpetuity, to me, it strikes me as short-sighted to think that we sitting here in this room right now can identify the 5 projects that are going to fix transportation for a generation in this community. I certainly don't think we can decide that. So I think that having a authority with the sunsets that is focused, I think that is giving ourselves in this room too much power and not enough trust in the future, like to solve it. But I wanted to return, actually, I raised my hand a long time ago because I want to return to the issue of the governance and the representation, right? Because I think what we're all scared of here, right, is that if we design a system, however we design the system of representation, it's going to create a set of rules that is going to allow one jurisdiction to get the short end of the stick, right? Whether it's the smaller jurisdictions, there's that word smaller, worried that if it's by population, that they can be, bullied around by the bigger jurisdictions, or if it's the bigger jurisdiction, worried that they're going to end up bankrolling the smaller jurisdictions, right? Like that's what we're worried about. But in the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, that equity is written into the enabling legislation, or is it a bylaw?
No, they've got a whole lot of things that contribute to the process before you can fund a project.
Right.
And the key part of that process is that they have to have a process of objectively scoring developments. So it's not like, hey, I'm going to go in there and only vote for Stafford projects. Hey, being you, not me.
Right.
It is, you first have to, like we do with CMAC and STB, most of which is going to be going to Spotsylvania this year. Those projects have valid projects that are going to contribute to the region. And then there's John's got a whole presentation for you tonight, waiting in the wings, to show you how all of these people have scoring methodologies, and your project has to actually score well in terms of contributing to the region. It can't be my little turning circle. This RTA is not set up to sort out your traffic circle. This is set up to do those more regional type projects, and they have to score. And if they score the very last one on the list, they're not going to be the first one you fund, right? So Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads and the Central Virginia have done this before, and every year they ask every jurisdiction to submit projects that you think are really important and really need to be done. And you have staff, not me, whoever you hire, who then scores those projects and brings you a recommendation which says, these four are going to really make a regional benefit, and here's why. These two, there's a smaller regional benefit. This one's going to have very low regional benefit. And then they bring you a recommendation to vote on and show you the scores, like we're about to do with CMAC and SDGB, right? It's not about, so that's why Spotsylvania this time around is getting the lion's share of this round of CMAC and SDGB, frankly, is because your projects score better, frankly. The way that you put them together, the length, the cost estimate you gave, the matched funding you put in, all of those things matter. There's not a game, right? And we as staff, and you can see now by the outcome, we as staff don't manipulate the score. We apply the methodology, give you the recommendation, and just so happens that this round, one jurisdiction is going to do much better than other jurisdictions because the projects just happen to score well in the methodology. Same thing here. John and I are going to show you in a minute that your RTA has to have a scoring methodology before there's any voting, before there's any money. You first have to have the project scored, designed, all these other steps.
Well, and with other projects, you can actually do your local projects with your district grant
So
money.
you're half of the money, you do
I
all
feel
your
like
local
this is
projects.
more for the HPP projects.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, if I just
I'm gonna let you finish up, then we're
Yeah.
gonna go to Monica, and then
to
we.
me,
can
I
move
think
on.
that like
Oh.
this argument we're having about representation is really an argument about equity, and that we should take on that issue of equity directly, right? With a set of rules written into enabling legislation if necessary, right? That creates some sort of set of scoring rules that ensure that the regional projects are having an impact on jurisdictions proportional to their population or something like that, right? Because for me, I actually kind of like the idea of the relatively high threshold to vote for things, because I think the whole point of this is regional cooperation, and we should agree, right? Like this should be a situation where it is a project that is so obviously in the regional benefit that we aren't actually fighting about it, right? So I personally speaking, I don't mind that, as long as we also have a sort of separate set of rules that is ensuring that nobody's getting left out, nobody's getting taken advantage of. And the other thing I would add about that is if we're doing things proportionally, right? And if the real concern is the money, we should do it proportionally by revenue generated, not proportionally by population, right? Because if you look at these numbers, right? Taking the city, for example, we're the second smallest population. We are a smaller population than Caroline County, but in this particular revenue model, we're generating 3 times the revenue that Caroline County is because of Central Park, right? And so, that would, if we're doing this proportional to population, that's something that would actually put the city at a real disadvantage where we're contributing sort of 3 times the revenue relative to our population and bearing, to your point, Lori, right, bearing the infrastructure costs of that
Right.
revenue generation. So if we are really concerned about equity on a money front, it strikes me that the representation should be proportional to revenue generated, not the population. Right, because that is a closer proxy for infrastructure perhaps.
Right, okay. We'll go down here. Sully? Okay,
So, couple things actually. One, I would, with the population versus the revenue generated, I would go back to what Ian said earlier. A lot of that money coming out of Central Park isn't from Fredericksburg. It's
Sure, no, of course, yeah.
But I apologize for going backwards, and I don't really have I'm not really leaning together on this, but I am kind of intrigued by the idea of time bounding this thing. I agree that it's foolish to think that we can solve all the problems within 2 years. But I do like the idea of forcing it back over to the General Assembly 2 years, 4 years, whatever down the road to look at it and go, yeah, that's working. We'll extend it for another 2 to 4 years. Or no, that's not really doing what we thought it would do. Let's readdress it.
the only, okay, Lori.
So I'm gonna go way back now, just for a second. And say that, you know, I'm here participating as an individual, Chris is here as an individual, Drew is, we all are, right? But this really comes down to what what our board is going to say, because we can't, you know, we're just here as, so, you know, our participation does not, or my participation does not indicate that it's a foregone conclusion that this is gonna happen, because we have to bring it
Oh,
before
I
our
think
board.
in this room, we all know that.
Okay, all right. I just want it on the record, for everybody to know.
I know you well enough that I can say that too.
But, you know, I think that, the concern that I have is we're creating another bureaucracy. That's what we're doing here, this RTA. And I'd like to know, and I don't think she did go over, she has the NVTA has a staff of 17. I believe she has a staff of 17 people plus her salary. Like, you know, that needs to be considered, that we are now setting up yet another bureaucracy that is going to be in existence in perpetuity, because never does this stuff go away. There's, even if you put a sunset clause in there, which I would be, you know, I would say that's a good idea. They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. So as we blaze this trail, let's be really honest with this. This is going to create, you know, we're hoping it's gonna create more money for projects, but that money comes with a cost, and that is to run this thing. And I'm very concerned about that.
Yes.
So the Northern Virginia one is a little bit of a different animal because it's so big, right?
Yeah.
It's colossal.
Yeah.
We are not comparative to them. The one in Richmond is the smaller of the 3. They have 1 staff member, 1. They share all their resources with the MPO and the PDC. We're more analogous to them because I doubt you're going to be wanting to employ 17 staff to hand out money. All you need is a scoring methodology and 1 person to keep it running and to convene your meetings and produce your agendas. You don't need 17 staff. It's too small. We're too small. We wouldn't have that. And how do I know that? Well, look at Richmond. They're bigger than us and they still only have 1 full-time staff member. And what they do is from time to time pay for a few hours of the other staff to do a GIS map or to make some sort of thing. So that's not required that you have such. Northern Virginia is great, but that's a colossal thing. We just not in that league, I don't believe.
Okay,
And they pay for all of their staff salaries and overhead costs out of the interest. They don't even use their capital employed people. It's just the interest that pays for it.
So just a couple things, and I'll kind of go backwards here because I was kind of taking notes for a little bit listening. This is great conversation, by the way, and thank you for letting it continue like this. I think it's been very helpful. Regarding the sunset, I don't foresee that being something that we would that would make sense for a few reasons. We're gonna continue to grow. There's gonna continue to be issues, not just for regional projects that we need to work on, but local projects. And so if this is something that we do, I think it will be useful well into the future. Also, a lot of us won't be here for, sitting around this table 10, 15, 20 years into the future. Things are gonna change. Our youth think very differently than we do. I would say, and this is not to say anything bad about us here on the table, but I think they're a little more collaborative. They see each other differently. And this is something that, I think could grow into a wonderful thing where there would be great collaboration throughout the region, whatever's to happen here in the future. So the point that Mr. Allis made regarding the scoring methodology, it's easy to think, okay, we're going to collect all this money and then there's just this feeding frenzy for whoever gets it. And that's not what's going to happen. So thank you for, addressing that. There is a methodology. It's not like we can just get together and say, we really, really want this thing. And, forget you, Spotsylvania, we're just, you know what I mean? Or anyone else like that. That's just not how it's going to happen. There's potential, but having those scoring methodologies, as part of the structure for how this works, that's the reason it's written into the legislation that we have to utilize those things, right? So I think it's important to remember that. And then just to kind of remember, and I think as we go through this, I'm probably going to do a lot of that, is like remembering like, why are we doing this and what's going on? This legislation was already submitted. This is right from a previous bill that was submitted. So we have the opportunity to inform what that legislation looks like when it most likely comes back. That's all this is, but it's a huge opportunity, which is why we're doing all of these work sessions, right? So we can say, hey, if you're gonna do this, this is what we want it to look like, right? And then, I mean, if it gets through, General Assembly, it gets to, House, Senate, whatever, you, as a locality, if you really don't want it, you can say we don't want it. Or, if you do, you can say we do. And we go forward from there. But at least we have an opportunity to say, this is what we want it to look like. Ideally, if this does happen, this would work best for us. And I don't know that that's been done in any of the other areas or how, and not that we need that history right now, but that's a unique opportunity, I think, for us. So.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily gonna come back to us. I think the whole reason we're doing this is so we write it and move it forward, if that's what we choose to do.
Right, but it was submitted without us.
Oh, right,
previously, is what I'm
exactly.
saying. So that could just.
Yeah, everybody's aware of that. They're
Right.
gonna do it to us. All right, Chris?
I do have a question. The scoring methodology, is there anything in the other taxing authorities that they must follow the scoring methodology?
Written in the legislation that they have to have a methodology and that they have to follow it. However, the legislation doesn't put all the weights in there. John's gonna show you the information now of how they do it and a suggestion as to how you can do it. So the legislation says you have to follow the scoring methodology. Also, you have to have the project in a long-range plan, either in the county comprehensive plan or the MPO long-range transportation plan. But you've got to have it in a plan. You've got to have it scored through the methodology. All of that spelled out in the legislation. The exact metrics you use in the scorecard are not put in the legislation. From time to time, as we do at FAMPO, we find that actually it's producing outcomes which we think are not actually okay. And then we want to change a little bit next time around. And we do that almost every year, unfortunately, but that we find it gives you weird outcomes and then you don't like those and then you want to make a little change to it. And that's normal, right? The legislation specifies you have to do it, but it doesn't give you every single metric because you might want to rework that from year to year.
And you have to follow it because I go back to what the CTV did with the northbound 95, and that's where it's very low, and yet they did it anyway. So
They have a sort of a veto. They're allowed to
You
pick up.
mean the river crossing?
Yeah. They're allowed to choose 3 projects a year that don't score well necessarily, but they believe are important statewide projects. But they can't do that for all the projects. They get a small number that they can lift up. Actually, even though this one scored badly, we're going to take this one and put it up because it's important to us.
All right, I'm gonna let
Yeah.
Lori go and then I think we should go to John's presentation next.
Just one other thing that to Monica, to piggyback off of what you are saying. Let's be really clear here too. When we talk about them doing this to us, right, the legislature, when they came and they sat in this room and we told them to stand down, they adhered to that.
Yeah.
They have a lot of other things to address other than an RTA. And they are supposed to be our representation. Now, I realize you guys have different people in Stafford than Spotsy or Fredericksburg does. But let's not, I'm not willing to just roll over and say, okay, legislators, you're on a higher level than us, so we're gonna let you do whatever you want. No, they should be listening to us say, yay, we want it, no, we don't, end of story, and so I hope that we don't discount our voice in this by allowing or by being afraid that they're going to impose something on us that we're kind of letting them,
Yeah.
I think we made it clear to them.
I think we did too.
I think we made it very clear to them that we have a regional authority here at FAMPO and GWRC, and that we try to work collaboratively as much as we possibly can. And you really put a fly in our ointment, and we didn't really like it.
Yeah.
And you were trying to dictate something to us, and you didn't even, really, it wasn't even legal legislation, the way it was written, the way it was crafted. So I think they got that message loud and clear, and I was appreciative, I think we all were, that they were here in the room to have those conversations with us. Because some people were really pointing the fingers at them, and I'm sure some of it didn't feel very good to them, but hey, I respected the fact that they were here in the room and took those bullets. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, I don't want what I'm saying to come off as like, this is just very fatalist, it's gonna happen. But because it has, and because there are unknowns, just as much as sitting around this table, we go, how do we put in guardrails to make sure some personality doesn't come in and just, steamroll a different locality and do the wrong thing? We never know what will happen. And so I just see this as an opportunity to inform what we want, if we want to do it. And that's all I'm really saying. And not out of fear. I've never once in my life made a good decision out of fear. So this is not like oh my gosh, I'm worried about what's going to happen to us. It looks like an opportunity to me. So I'm glad we're having the conversation, but I just wanted to say that.
The last thing I wanted to say is that we are planning for our board, because, Deontay's here, Monica's here, and me, and Crystal's not tonight, but the rest of our board is not informed about this RTA. And so we are going to actually have a work session after the budget and all of that's over, just to bring our board up to speed on all of these RTA conversations, so that if we want to move forward, that we are in a position that we can do that, so that everybody's educated on the topic and how if we want this legislation to go forward, what do we want it to look like? So I just bring that up in case you guys want to do the same thing on your end. Okay, any last questions before we move on?
Just go back please to that slide.
Janet.
One thing, like to Lori's point, is that I look at
Charlie,
this
please
whole
go back to
process
those slides.
as a way of making a really big bureaucracy work for our region. Like, instead of us creating a bureaucracy, there is all this big bureaucracy, but this is a way that we can make it work for the region. So
just
Okay. Yeah.
just as we leave these slides, I just want to reiterate that 4/5, whether it's by population or by jurisdiction, is the highest threshold of any RTA. This is higher than anybody else. In order to spend money, you've got to have a much higher threshold here than even in Richmond, because Richmond does have that weighted voting, but their threshold isn't as high. This is the highest threshold. It's more than anybody else. And it wasn't my idea. I'm not claiming credit for it. It comes out of the Senate bill. Next slide. That's the end. Okay, we're done with that. Okay. Discussion. Yeah, I think I've done the discussion. All right.
Oh, comedy hour.
Well done.
So we workshopped this as a staff this afternoon, and we're going to share this one between a bunch of us. So I'll start the first 4 slides. Prioritization of projects. This is the other half of the discussion you just had. How do we prioritize projects? So a methodology is required, and the legislation would say that unless you guys take it out, I suggest that legislation should say you must have an objective prioritization methodology based on objective analysis. It must consider the benefits relative to costs, because if you want to spend $1 billion for a sidewalk, I would say you shouldn't do that, because it's got to be, that's a reasonable return on the investment.
What a sidewalk.
Only if they go somewhere.
Is it heated?
It depends how long it
That
was.
was extra.
So projects must be included in the state regional long range plan. Already by that point, right? Lots of projects fall off because they don't score well. They're not in your comprehensive plan. They're not in FAMPO's plan. They fail the benefit to cost thing. So by this point already, the really rubbish projects are out the door, right?
Right.
It gives you lots of teeth before you've even got to voting. It already does that. And then there would be combinations of bike ped, transit, highway, whatever it is you want to put into the thing. That's what we put in. Next one.
You did.
An initial set of allocations could be the local match. So this wasn't intended to be to Chris's point, but it kind of does play into that.
Oh.
My suggestion to you, and again, do with it what you like, is that you try to require your applicants, being the jurisdictions, to also apply for grants, so that we don't have to 100% fund your $150 million project. So we give you 20 million or whatever the number is, and then you still apply for a federal grant, a state grant, a smart scale application or whatever else, but now you've got match. So now you've got a better chance of getting the federal state grants. So let's say we have 5 projects that you agree in the next 5 years we have to build. And we give every project $10 million worth of match. It's an arbitrary example. And let's say one gets a federal grant to fully fund it with the balance. 2 of them get funded in smart scale and 2 of them fail. They don't get any funding. You then only have to fund 2 for the balance of the money, right? You can still build all 5 projects, but you're only on the hook for 2 and the match portions of the others. You get a bigger, that's the real bonus of this RTAs. It's not the idea that, oh, we got 5 projects, they're going to cost us 600 million. We got to wait, Chris, until we've got the full 600 million. That would be a bad way to go. A much better way to go would say, we take our money, we put 10 or 20 million or whatever it is on the project, and then you, King George County, apply for a federal grant for the balance. And we wait until all of these federal and state applications have gone in and we've got the scores and the results back. If half of them don't get the funding, we can then fund the balance. But you don't have to fund everyone 100%. That would, I think, be a stupid way to spend your money. It's better to do what Hampton Roads does. You put some of the money down and then you win the pot to get the rest from the state or the feds. And the net effect is you build a total amount. By the way, we checked the constrained long range plan of FAMPO this afternoon. And you have $2.6 billion worth of projects that you put in there that you want to build. And you're never going to find the money to do those without an RTA. And the river crossing bridge isn't even in there.
So I'd like to add to what Ian said, and Chris, you've been around, of everybody sitting at this table, you've been the longest, right? Yeah, whether you like it or not. But I just remember when I got on FAMPO, so many years ago, we would look every time, and it was our former administrator, who's now out in Spotsylvania, and every time Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads were just outperforming us, time and time again, because of all their match money that they had. And, of course, Northern Virginia, their projects are expensive. We think our land around here is expensive. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what they have to pay for their projects up there. But the whole reason that I was sharing that is, remember, we moved from category 1, which was all congestion, to category 2 to try to be more competitive, because we said this region cannot compete on the HPP projects against Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia. But it took us a couple of years to figure that out, that we're not getting the money because we're competing against them. We're in the wrong category.
Yes.
Did you have anything to add to that, Chris?
Well, I did have one question, making pointing out my age too.
Oh.
Oh, we thought you were young.
Well, I'm the youngest one with the longest serving.
Elected at 5.
Yeah, exactly. Is that, and when I throw up a lot of these, it's for discussion because I think that's what we need.
Right.
And especially to have it on the record so that in future years, people can go back and go, what were they intending by this? What was this all about? So this is really good. I really appreciate it. Is that when a project is scored, so let's say every jurisdiction would have a project in for that year. Projects are scored, but say only 2 make it. Would it be feasible, or does anybody else do this, where they say, okay, your project is in, the split that we do, the 70-30, the local stuff that comes back, you must put that towards that project.
When you can, I don't know about must, but let's say, I mean,
It'd be helpful.
let me use an example that's controversial and, blame me, right? I'll take the blame. So let's take the river crossing project. I know for a fact that Spotsylvania is less enthusiastic about that particular project, right? That's not a secret. I don't have to.
Yeah,
That's putting it mildly.
They really don't like it. Let's just say that.
Facts are facts.
I'm being nice,
That's a good
right?
project to use.
So let's say the RTA decides, well, not everybody is happy about fully funding their project, right? But you put some money towards it, whatever the number is, whatever the number is. And then you can say to Stafford and the city, well, okay, here's 40 million. If you want 50 million as your match, you put in from your local amount that you got your money to make up the 10 difference, right?
Yeah.
So that is a way to handle that where it's not Spotsylvania's money. It's okay. The initial pot is from everybody, but then if you want more, hey, we gave you 10 million local match. You put in your own 10 million local match. We don't want ours to go in there. So that's a way that type of project could not get the massive funding
Kind
from
of drain
Spotsylvania.
the system.
A little bit from the central pot and then a bunch from your own pot. And then the rest must come from the federal
And I
grant,
was
so
gonna
that
say,
you're
and a
not
lot from the
lumped with that
feds.
project. I'm using that as an example because I know people are passionate for and against the project as an example. So that is what I would say to your question, is that there's ways to.
Right, I
do that.
don't want to force anybody, but I would say that it would be beneficial though, that if the city and staff would then took their 10 million that they got back, put it towards it, better chance they have of it happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and
And
just
that's
like with the
substantive.
Harrison Road, connector.
Sure, and I think in
And that's
the
a standard
bylaws, that's where we can start to put guardrails about how much, can go toward a single project. For
Because
instance.
I'm sorry.
Why do you guys keep bringing up Harrison Road? Educate the rest of us on it, on whether or not you guys want it, you don't want it, or it's too expensive, or.
Because when it came out 30 something years ago, the Fed said it was too close. We don't want to do it.
To Route 3.
To Route 3.
Yeah.
And so then, and they were just asking for an offering, basically a CD lane, remember CD lanes?
Yep.
They wanted a CD lane from 17 all the way down to Harrison. And the Fed said no, because if you can't get back on the interstate, they don't want to do that anymore. So they said.
Chris, what's CD? I have to ask.
Collector distributor lane.
It's a local lane.
It's a local lane.
Like what there is on the bridge.
Oh, okay, just trying to,
Yeah.
acronym I didn't know.
The local. Hey, I knew the term, I had no idea what the C and D stood for, so I asked last week, so don't feel bad.
I usually just nod along like I know. So, but basically then the Feds kind of scrapped it, so it went away for a while. And it came back in the study that it showed that it really was the best thing that Spotsy could do to reduce traffic on Route 3.
Yes.
Because as you know, we keep throwing money after Route 3 and nothing gets better. So how can we impact it? Now, it's not by itself. We also have to increase capacity on Harrison Road, which we're doing, and take it all the way out. And there's also the connector road up to the mall that got shot down years ago that shouldn't have been, that I would love to see go back in, because that would then give you multiple ways to get around. So that's why it's come back.
What I'm hearing from Sorry,
No, I was gonna say, because we also had two other projects that VDOT actually pushed, was, exit 129. No, I'm sorry, go the other way, 123. And it was a brand new interchange, it was down Mass Road. And they said, oh, that's too much money, so they came up with this, super ramp, if you remember.
I remember the
ramp.
super ramp, yes.
And that was gonna be basically coming off of 126 and giving a turn onto the Spotsy Parkway or South Point Parkway, another bridge that would take you over to 17 as a flyover, all this kind of stuff, right? We went through all of the studies, everything that we had to do, and the Federal Highway said no, because it does not guarantee that it relieves congestion past 30 years. Up to 30 years it does, but, or a little bit less than it doesn't. So they said, no, you can't do it. But what we have right now is congestion. So it would give you 20-something years of no congestion, but it did give you 30, so they said no. But the good thing that came out of that was the protection from Germanna down to the Capital One buildings, because that really, right, too, and the county's in the process of doing that too. So Harrison Road was part of a bigger plan of getting people moving around, which is all that I'm ever saying when I say that we need to get things done. Because,
Yeah.
well, no, I'm not pointing directly at you. I'm
Well,
pointing
you-
at you. How about that?
Me?
To the guy sitting behind you.
Oh, yeah, good-
Oh.
nice try.
Is that, okay, fine, it's you.
No, that's, no,
You got a phone with the.
Chris knows what he's doing.
Is that, I want to see these projects get completed. Because we've sat around and talked about them for so long, that and I'm not saying that I'm smarter than anybody in the future, and I'm gonna be here 15 years from now, trust me. But I don't want these projects to sort of lag and something else come up. And I'm glad that we're hearing all this about the scoring and what goes into it. Because it's important that the people that are paying for it, whether they shop at Central Park or the Town Center or Stafford, actually see improvement. That's the whole point to all of this, is that
I couldn't agree
15 years
more.
from now, you will have people that, are, hey, isn't it a great thing that we can get over here using this road, and look how much better this is. That's what I want all of this to be.
Okay, first off, if I may, just really quick, one quick comment. I hope we're having lunch 15 years from now. That would be lovely.
So let's schedule it.
Okay.
Be in Fred, or is it gonna be in Spotsy?
Stafford.
You can
That
drive
would be
over,
popping by then.
you can drive over the new river crossing. Okay, Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Orange.
So as the only
Right.
representative in Spotsy that's affected by Harrison Road and the river crossing, I have something to add. It's not that Spotsy officially or myself are against alleviating congestion or connecting staff. Right. It's if this was a Rorschach test, the river crossing would be the little black dot on the white card. Because it's not, it's only addressing the need or the desire in that to accomplish that goal of connecting Central Park with Stafford. It's not planning for the second or third order effects of what happens afterwards. Right now, Route 3 is a channelized environment. It's stressed. There's very little limitations to expand Route 3. So Harrison Road then becomes the relief valve for that. That's to address our current stress, our current issues of transportation. Let's go ahead and introduce another artery that the transparency we're seeing, oh, we're going to develop the peninsula in Stafford, okay, with 5,000 units, 7,000 units, 8,000 units, whatever it is in the next 20 years. And the city's going to max out the Central Park area. Then what happens south of that? What happens in the county? If we're only looking at this right now we're not factoring anything in that can deal with the future problems that this will create.
Sure, and just if I can answer that very quickly. So first off, in no way am I thinking that this project stands alone as some sort of, panacea. Not at all. This is an issue. It must be addressed. And if you haven't seen the presentation that Ian made with the streetlight data to show.
I have issues with that, but that's okay.
Okay.
Would love to in a sidebar, tear it apart.
Totally fair. All right. All right. Yes, well, when our girls get together, we're supposed to do it then.
That's right.
But I mean, the other thing is that, I mean, yes, I want to do the river crossing. I want to do the Harrison Road interchange, given all the data that we've seen to alleviate the concern. I want to do the Western Network in Stafford. I want to do extended transit within the city of Fredericksburg. I want to be able to, have, the routes in King George so that the trucks are not completely clogging up everything for the residents. I want to create that bridge over 95 for Caroline. I mean, I want to do all of those things around the region. I mean,
And maybe, excuse me, to interrupt, but
Yeah.
you need to rearrange the order that you want to address those things.
well,
You have to have, there needs, you want to build the outlet for the future traffic, because once you build congestion early,
Mhm.
you're creating more density, more traffic, more congestion, and now you're reacting to that instead of working from the west into the central part of. And I'm speaking like a planner right now. I'm sorry for.
no, no, it's totally fine. At no point do I think I've mentioned the order in which these things have happened, because right now we're still at a place where we're just talking whether or not we're going to pursue them, period. Or are we going to drop them, period. I don't think anybody's gotten into order of operations yet.
I would gently push back,
Mhm.
Councilman Jason, in that we've funded a consultant.
Got it. Need-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Study. The priority of discussion is the river crossing. And we're talking about an RTA to fund that. Now, we're also adding in the other things. I give you that. But the order of focus is obvious. So although you might have concerns, or we might all collectively recognize the
Mhm.
areas that do need to be improved, okay? I don't see that as leading with a forward planning, 30 years working backwards kind of thing. I'm not seeing that. So that's the only thing that I want to just put on the table. And so that people don't think that we're just trying to stick a piece of wood in the spokes to derail everything, okay?
Mhm.
Setting aside the environmental, that kind of stuff of a river crossing. But I'm just saying it's not that. We're not trying to be, just kill it just because we don't want to cooperate. That's all I was trying to say.
Just a quick fact. We actually have already given CMAC and SDG money to fund the design and study for the Harrison Road interchange to Spotsylvania, simultaneously to allocating the funds to do the river crossing study. So we're not doing them one before the other. We're doing them simultaneously. But it's obviously, the thing I need to say is that I don't try to take over projects that jurisdictions are already working on as a policy, because I think that's a waste of my time. And I know that Paul and Spotsylvania have already gone the first part of widening Harrison Road. They applied for the funding to do the study that's required for the interchange. We allocated, I don't know, $100,000 or $150,000 last year to Spotsylvania to do the study. I'm guessing they're going to apply for some more, or they're going to use the county funds. But it's just the reason why it seems to you such a big deal is because I'm not driving the Harrison Road interchange, because I wouldn't want to go to Paul and say, hey, Paul, I'm taking over your project. We're leaving it with the county to manage the study and the project. And all we do is when they ask for money, we try to allocate some money, but it's got to be based on the score and all that kind of stuff. So it's not quite correct that we're doing the one first. They're both proceeding simultaneously at the study level, depending on the timeline of the jurisdictions and the funding and all that. So we're proceeding both. And if you want me to say on the record, I fully support both, then you've got it from me on the record. I am supporting both simultaneously. And if Paul says to me, I need help, I'll be there, but I'm not treading on his toes. I just think you guys have got staff, you've got people, and you tell us when you want help. We just don't interfere. So FAMPO's a little more emphasis on the river, simply because they're adequately staffed and have the competency to run their own study.
Fair enough.
So I would just like to say that I don't think of this RTA really for the river crossing. The river crossing kind of came up kind of after the fact.
Mhm.
I think of it more as a federal and state project. I really would love to see other roads in our region addressed with the RTA money before the river crossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Then I should caveat my comments because I'm fresh and don't understand
Sure.
the history.
Sure,
Just perception, not speaking for the board, not speaking for anybody else, just, my little fishbowl.
yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, I feel like if the order, the perception index was flopped around, you potentially have a lot more chance for buy-in from the south side of the river. If you saw something that we're really, our number one priority being invest. And I know you guys have that, but right now the bandwidth you're focusing on is, so I just saying, it's just a perception thing.
Sure, I guess that we don't.
The county said, please help, I'll be there, I'm just not standing on toes.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
I
sure.
agree with what Drew said. Cause I think they kind of came around. Felt like
think
around
it
the
just-
same time.
I think it
Timing.
was happened like that. I don't.
With HPP and the match, I think that, I mean, that, to me at least, that drove as much of the RTA discussion as anything is recognized. And then when, Area 2 went away as an option for us, that was when we all of a sudden realized we were gonna continue to lose time after time after time to Northern Virginia and Hampton roads. I think unfortunately it's coincidental.
Yeah, and the changing of smart scale now.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Right.
there's-
And let's not forget that the RTA didn't actually start as our idea.
No,
They tried to
Right,
do
right.
it to us.
Right.
This was our
And this
response.
little foreign South African said, we first fought it 3 times. We went down there and said, stop, 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 stop. And after the 3rd time, I came to you all and I said, hey, maybe we need to talk about some other approach than just shouting stop because we're not winning, right?
Right. And
So,
when I went to a transportation meeting in DC last year, year before, no, it was last year, and I saw a presentation of the NVTC. And I just went, whoa, wasn't that up in DC with you?
It was.
And I was just flabbergasted by the amount of money that they had raised for congestion in their region. And that is kind of what we kind of said, let's bring it forward. Let's have a more fluid discussion about all this. So, okay, do we have other, yes, Will.
Madam Chair, I just want to say, Drew, I think what you're saying, I completely hear it. And I think you have just put an incredibly eloquent statement out there for regional cooperation, right? Which is to say, these
Absolutely.
things are all interconnected, right? And the bridge solves one set of problems, it creates another set of problems. And if in a hypothetical world where the city and Stafford could move forward on the bridge on their own, I mean, we can't, right? But in a hypothetical world where we could, if we just did it on our own, we could be like, Spotsylvania, who cares what
Exactly.
happens there, right? So to me, the RTA is like the perfect entity to say like, okay, if we need to pursue this river crossing to solve this one set of problems, we need to all collaboratively as a region remember that it might create other problems and that, in order not to make the world worse, we need to make the river crossing and Harrison Road widening happening at the same time, right? Those things need to, right? Like, that's why we need a regional body that can coordinate. Because otherwise, we're gonna end up
Yeah.
all pursuing our own individual interests and potentially causing worse problems for our neighbors.
And we
Like,
need- and we
that's
need-
what we need in our.
In the region.
and we need a couple
Yeah.
of studies, regional studies, because we need to help King George identify what the impact of those trucks is gonna be on the triangle and what the best solution is. We need to identify what kind of, whether we need the bridge in Caroline County, which leads into Spotsylvania, it's the road carries on through there. Do we need to do that and what's gonna cost it? How, we had to put a number there, so we think our number is reasonable, but it might be off. We need to do a study to find that out. So this RTA should be funding the studies. But I have to tell you, and I'm gonna quote Paul now, right? I'm gonna quote Paul. Paul said, he's getting very frustrated with smart scale. I'm paraphrasing, so Paul, if you're listening, I hope I don't get it wrong. He said, I'm getting very frustrated with smart scale because we do these pipeline studies that are funded by VDOT and run by VDOT. And I am going to be dead 100 years before we get to fund the number of projects that we've already decided. I'm going to be dead 100 years. It's impossible. VDOT brings the studies to prepare you for smart scale, and then you get one little project, and you've got 9 right? And they tell you you can't do all the intersections, you can only do one. And he said, I'm gonna be dead before we get to the end of this.
Yeah, it's gotta be very frustrating for a transportation planner. Okay, Monica?
I'll be real quick. Just one question to the discussion regarding, the regional monies versus being able to put in additional local monies. Is that already, permitted, and just checking with state code and how we have talked about doing that? Or is that something we need to work into our things specifically?
Say that again, sorry?
The discussion regarding, if we are doing a regional project and it impacts certain localities more and they want to put additional of the local monies into it.
Yes.
Um,
So I think
so
what-
it's not, on the backs of Spotsylvania.
So my suggestion is what you do is that you have a sort of a like 20% funding that you put on projects across all jurisdictions. And then you go to federal and state grants to try to find a balance,
Mhm.
and the jurisdictions can then add to that 20% if they don't think that.
Right, and we can-
But I
Or
think
10% or whatever the
Question-
number is.
No, I
question
think
was
she's
just,
asking,
can we do that? If
are they doing that right
Is anyone
now?
else doing that? Do we know that we can actually do that if
That's
we
our
got to that point, or is that something we have to write into the
No,
legislation?
you put it in the methodology, which
Okay.
John's gonna.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
You put a line in the
I
methodology.
just want to make sure we're like, oh, that sounds good, but can we make sure we
right.
can do it?
It's
Yes.
getting late. It's 5 minutes till 8.
So we know how to do this because we do it.
Oh, and
currently.
Kathy has something.
We have a CMAQ estimate methodology. It operates now. It works now. Sometimes it benefits one jurisdiction, sometimes it benefits another one. That's the way it works. We have a constrained long-range plan. It has a methodology. We use it right now. These two that we're going to show you now, the Richmond RTA has got a methodology, and the I-81 corridor has got a methodology, and we're going to walk you through them. Gentlemen, the two staff over there are going to walk you through those two. Can you give the high-level summary? Because I think
Okay, and then before you guys get started, Connor and John, Kathy has a question and then
Well,
we'll move on.
It's just a comment real quickly, because for King George, the only study that we have to do anything is a study that was done in 2017, 2018, and that was on 301. So for King George, we can't even put in for any real projects because we have no real studies for any of our roads. So I just want that to be out in the open. And one other thing, because I've said this many times, and so you haven't heard me say this, our comp plan is not what it needs to be. So we don't have transportation planning in our comp plan.
you need to have a study,
And that's what I'm
and we
saying.
need to fund it.
That's why I'm just putting it out there. We don't have anything that VDOT recognized as a study, except for the 301 study that was done in 2017, 2018.
And I'm going to be a little bit naughty because I think I might have created the wrong impression just now.
Mhm.
Personally, you say I have opinions. Okay, so this is a personal opinion. Scream at me if you like. My personal opinion is that I think that Caroline and King George should be members of FAMPO, and I'll tell you why. I have a suspicion, and there's no proof one way or the other, but I have a suspicion that part of the problem at FAMPO in the past is that you have too few jurisdictions. So there's almost no arbiter. It's like if two of them fight, that's the end of FAMPO.
Mhm.
Whereas if you have 5, there are other people in the room who could say, hey, Chris, calm down. What about this other thing, right?
You chose your seat.
I'm thinking it doesn't seem. The fact that FAMPO is a really oddball because it only has 3 jurisdictions. If you have 5, there's a greater chance of regional collaboration because you've got to get a friend to agree with you.
Mhm.
It's very hard when you have three
Well,
jurisdictions.
then,
So
and you
there's a
look at the
personal-
dynamic
I
of
agree with
everything
that.
that went
There's a
on in years
personal opinion.
past.
Yeah.
So I
just wanna-
support, you, but
Okay, thank
Good point. There were some,
but
okay.
shoot me. It's okay.
So then you would help.
We can-
I can make that happen, but you all have to vote for it because the rules say that if they don't have the urban connection to the FAMPO urban area, then they may join, they don't have to join, and both they have to ask, and FAMPO has to vote to agree to it, and then we approach the governor with the document to ask if he will sign. So if and in the past, frankly, I'll say this because it's just a fact, in the past, FAMPO voted no. That's the fact.
Right.
Next one.
Against both Caroline and King George, or just,
It was never formally
That was
done.
years ago.
It was never
Do you remember
formally
that?
done. It
I
was
don't
never
remember that.
formally done in a formal vote. Certain individuals that I'm not gonna name here talked King George out
Okay.
of it.
All
So,
right, thank you for that
The gentlemen are
information,
gonna give you the
Kathy.
high level summary. I'm gonna shut up.
All right, Connor.
All right, so
Wow.
here you'll see a comparison of all the metrics used in the scoring. So you see FAMPO, the CMAC, STBG, the CLRP, you have the CBTA scoring, ID1s, and then Smart Scale. They all have like similar metrics. The similarity you'll really see is every single scoring methodology uses congestion mobility as a metric, safety, and then cost effectiveness. So those are constants out of all of them. And then there's different variables. You have land use, accessibility, project readiness, etc. After that, so here I'll just run you guys through the CBTA process. It's very similar to FAMPO's. There's project submissions, project screening, which is done by CBTA staff and TAC. Project scoring and ranking, which is the bulk of this. We'll be getting to that, and then project selection. Next slide, please. So the big three for CBTA are safety, mobility, and accessibility, right? Accessibility is split up into economic development and equity. This is done at a 60-40 split, so economic development is going to be 60%, while equity is 40%. And then after all of this is scored within the projects, this is divided by the cost to get a cost benefit score. So that's done after the fact rather than originally. Next slide, please. They separate bridges out. So I believe in the prior one, that's going to be for highway, active, multimodal transit, all the same. Bridges is done using VDOT's state of good repair scores. Next slide, please. Here you'll see kind of a pie chart to see what's most important. The main thing to look at is the pie chart on the left. Safety is a big factor. And then actually second would be economic development, followed by mobility, and then equity last.
Connor, what's the SGR bridge up there? What's that?
State of good repair.
Oh, state of good. Repair.
Yeah.
Like
VDOT has their own metric and they just use that for bridges. They
Okay.
deal. And yeah, that's basically how CBTA does it for their score.
Just from the analysis that you've done in looking at this, you guys have studied this a lot. What's your perception on kind of the advantages and disadvantages, if you have an opinion?
I will say keep it simple.
Yeah.
Every single one of the scoring criteria that we've seen has usually taken a more simplified approach than what is Smart Scale. And I'll get to that in the I-81 order, but they usually make it as a very simple, what is there an objective way to determine congestion? We have volume to capacity ratios. Is there something that we can do with safety? We can know how many crashes there are and how many, if you apply a treatment, there's a metric that you can determine how much of a safety improvement, reduce fatalities along the course. Those are very simple and we can apply those on a lot of projects. You do have to be careful with the volume of a project, but normally you can usually bake in, particularly with cost, that you could have a big project that has a whole lot of benefit, but if it's super expensive, you might have some other smaller projects start creeping up. And that's even something that has happened even within the FAMPO methodology.
Okay, that's very interesting. Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you talked about keep it simple. That makes a lot of sense. It gives us fewer things to argue about. But economic development, that one seems much less simple and much more subjective.
Well, if you could go back to that, one more, please. They just do it.
Okay, I didn't have a chance to.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to whiz through it. So
No.
the description for that would be increase in average access to weighted destinations per 1,000 persons. You have a cap of 30 minutes for all population.
And job access.
And then jobs access, yeah.
Weighted destinations. I'm not sure I understand what weighted destinations are.
Frankly,
So
I'm sorry?
I'd have to go more in depth.
That's totally fine. I was also scrolling this very quickly before coming in, and that was one where I was just kind of stuck, but that's okay.
Yeah, this is very good. Okay. Yes.
One question. So as you look at projects, let's say you have 10 projects and you look at them and the cost for one is high and you said you can do 2 others. Is there any way to look at all the projects sort of together, they work together and do they impact each other?
John,
All right, so you're saying it as if two projects that are put together and you kind of score them based on their combined
Oh, no,
value?
more like,
Dependencies.
Synergy.
yeah, so if you were to do this project and it costs 100 million, this one only costs 10 million. This one actually will impact that to help those problems. Or are we doing each study sort of in a vacuum and not looking how they impact other? And I know that is probably very difficult to do.
It's possible. So right now, at least with the FAMPO methodology, we actually compare all the projects against each other. So we are kind of looking at how they compare to each other. So if you have one that's doing really, really well in a category, it kind of stretches out the score on a 10-point scale more so than others. And if they're all clustered together, the differences shrinks. There's not.
EDTA does that too. They
Yeah.
normalize them.
But I think to.
But to the second thing is, in our methodology, if you have projects, even in our methodology now, if it's the next phase of a project, you actually do get a scoring. So it kind of helps that you have to kind of look at the cost and the size of the project, because you don't want to be too expensive, that you drag your cost benefit down. So you want to kind of phase your projects, but it doesn't penalize, if you have to phase your projects, doesn't completely penalize you the next time you come around that you're coming in as a completely green project. You're actually part two of the project, and therefore you get a little bit of a bump, but it's not an insurmountable thing for new projects to.
I want to,
Okay, Jason.
I want to rephrase Chris's question.
Okay.
Let's say I've got 10 projects on a list, projects 1 through 10. If I pick projects 5 and 6, I get a certain amount of benefits. But if I don't do project 6, suddenly the benefits for project 5 change.
An east-west type of study where we start comparing projects to see a cumulative congestion thing.
And then dependencies. It's like if so all of a sudden now project 5 doesn't get chosen at all if project 6 doesn't get chosen.
Oh, yeah.
Considering that we can study, we can probably do it, but that's gonna be a.
I mean, your Harrison Road,
It's.
river crossing type of.
So Ian has a little,
It can be done.
transition there.
So I'm being told to let my staff do their thing, but I'm just gonna give one comment. If we have an RTA, what will happen is that you'll have fewer projects, but there'll be bigger projects. When you have that scenario, what you do is you run the travel demand model and it will tell you those answers that you want. Because you can say, if we do project 1 and 3, what's the impact on congestion? Oh, but what if we do project 1 and 2? What's the impact on congestion? Or 3 and 5? So you can do all those permutations in the travel demand model, but you can't do it when you have 1,000 projects. So when you have 5, that's how you answer your question.
So in this round of CMAC, real quick, all 3 jurisdictions submitted a Route 1 project. I would have loved to figure out how to stitch it together. However, the methodology wasn't written that way, but that's going to be one thing that I want to talk about later, because everybody kind of submitted basically the same project in their jurisdictions for the same kind of reason, access management. But there's no way, at least in the rules that are written, for me to kind of like, let's take all 3 and reconsider that, because we would have to figure out how to submit a regional project. So this could do that. It could do it, but.
Kathy?
When did EJ get thrown into the mix in this scoring?
Oh, for Richmond's?
From inception, I think, in Richmond.
Sorry, what does EJ stand for?
Environmental justice. It's on the bottom of the slide there.
Oh, sorry.
And then how do they calculate EJ population here? Because different definitions of it.
So there are state metrics where
Okay.
the state of Virginia has decided this is how it is.
I just, because that's a big percentage there.
For the benefit of everybody in the room, who can best explain environmental justice in this
John.
particular methodology?
So that's always a tricky one. So I'm going to preface this that.
Sure.
Traditionally, within the census and census blocks, it identifies traditionally disadvantaged populations, which it can be a gamut. You could have age, race, income levels, consistent poverty, can be a wide metric. In some cases, the census might not technically catch it, because actually this is a previous MPO where the census blocks divided things north-south, where the EJ community was actually divided east-west. So you can actually find metrics, even if it's not a blip to show, or it can also fall off. So there's always a bit of assessment there that truly depends on kind of local knowledge to identify anything that's missing or overrepresented, because we've also found ones that have been labeled EJ that should have been, but they just got that flag. So,
I think for people,
Okay.
we always forget about people because they're not on the main drag. So this tries to say, hey, don't forget the book.
But EJ is not just four. And the other
I know,
point
I'm
with
just-
EJ is you have to have, and they were doing this with the this whole solar state committee I was on, is they were trying, a lot of groups were trying to get every county to have an EJ mapping in their comp plans. So that was one thing that was proposed. to
We have it
EJ
already
mapping.
in the FAMPO LRTP. It's
Mhm.
already there.
Right.
But for each locality, you know, I know we don't have it. I doubt anybody here has it in their
I
comp
think
plan.
we've done it for you in the FAMPO.
Right, and
actually,
FAMPO is
WRC.
different.
No, just, I'm talking about in the counties.
So I know, but
Right,
FAMPO
right.
did at least for the localities at FAMPO.
Right.
Okay, Will?
I have a question. What of this, you mentioned a moment ago, Ian, right, that some of this is is coded into the enabling legislation and some of it is, the authority. Which part of this is encoded and which part is flexible?
So the categories you can put in the legislation, it's no good putting the percentage weightings because you're gonna have to change those as circumstances change in your area. So you say.
All the subcategories too?
So, no, so you typically say you have to score projects based on safety, congestion and environmental concerns. And
Okay.
then you leave it at that. And then when the RTA is.
Okay, I know.
Then you all create your own methodology.
Okay, all right.
And John can write it for you in his sleep is the number.
okay, I-81 corridor.
Thank
This is a different beast. Basically, they have their methodology encoded in their establishing legislation. And they're actually specifically targeted, they have to follow smart scale. So those 5 PDCs and the corridor, whatever smart scale decides, they have to follow. And after what it is, it's very much VDOT driven because VDOT actually screens the risk and readiness input before they even get to scoring. So basically that's a third of the process is actual scoring. And VDOT kind of looked at smart scale and said, that's too complex. We don't really want to follow that. So they're going to propose a huge way of cutting it down. The other item is that they also identified in their legislations what their split is. That was going to be 50-50 districts. So the VDOT districts get it. And then there's a corridor-wide funding. It's about $1 million. It's based on center line miles of Interstate 81. So Bristol and Salem, Roanoke area have smaller distances. The Stanton, which is basically the upper half of the Shenandoah, has the most mileage, but it kind of splits up into different ways. So they actually have that written into their methodology. So they're kind of basically boxed in a whole lot. That being said, the CTB is their board, and so it follows smart scale. CTB controls that, so they do have some movement. So VDOT, which drives this process, basically took smart scale and deleted a lot. They removed land use, environment, and economic development, although they kind of have economic development kind of baked back into it a little bit. And they're just looking at crash frequency. So they're not looking at crash rate. They're not trying to account for volume differences. They're not looking at person throughput. They're looking at hours of delay. And then they have, which accounts for 80%. Then they have a smaller one that's access to jobs and access jobs to EJ communities, which is a much smaller percent. So they basically took smart scale and lopped it into very core components. And that's how they prioritize their projects. And they prioritized them when they it started out to 2035. So no sunset on that. That one was talked about as having a sunset, but they didn't. But they just planned out 15 years almost from the get-go through the VDOT process.
Tell them your
That's
joke.
good to know,
Tell
Chris.
me your joke.
Oh, yeah, joke.
Oh, which
Your smart scale joke about this methodology.
2 planners going to a bar.
we are, aren't we?
Come back a slide. So John says, these blighters.
No, let John tell it.
No, I am now curious which joke I was talking about because I am now.
Smart scale and how they administer that versus how they do this.
They don't want to be bothered by their own process.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
Hard to be not listening.
They've abandoned half of their own process because it's too work.
They don't want to eat their own dog food.
Exactly.
Look at all those lines they
Hilarious.
canceled through things.
Fascinating.
That actually
Yeah.
says a
Throwing
lot.
that red flag out on the field.
That tells you something about Smart Scale when they get delete off the categories.
That, and I do say that it does speak to keeping it simple, keeping it easy to understand, particularly when you're dealing with a large area. Like
Could
that.
that, John,
Yes.
to be fair, could that just be because of the I-81 corridor, the uniqueness of the corridor itself?
It could, in some case, but I mean, we're competing with other jurisdictions, even for 95 and other major funding. And it's not just 81 that's eligible, it's any parallel route, other ones that tie in. It just has to relate to 81. Even rail line potentially would do it. They really trimmed it down. So.
Well, and I think what happened is, I'll never forget at one of the VACO meetings, 81, all the people down there all had those big buttons. Do you guys remember, and said Highway 81, and they were pushing the General Assembly, we want money, we want our piece of the pie. Because I think that's when everybody said, wow, look at what Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads are getting, and we're just standing here on the sidelines and we have no money. And we're not maximizing our projects. That's what it was. They weren't creating economies at scale.
Do we get pins if we do this?
Yeah.
Next.
But I will say I-81 does share a very kind of cautionary tale. One of the first steps of the RTA process is to develop the methodology. Almost every single thing kind of at least starts on the very basic. You need a clear, objective and clear criteria, sorry, I missed a word, that addresses the original needs, but also needs to address what else are we going to be competing for? And this is going to be me putting my thumb on the scale here, because you can put this. I would heavily recommend not having overly prescriptive language put into the legislation that defines the priorities. I would say be very careful. You can say we're going to measure objectively clear, maybe safety and congestion, a few ones. But we don't want to be dependent on the legislation akin to I-81. If we say we have to follow, if it says we have to follow Smart Scale and Smart Scale isn't working for us, that could be an issue. So we want to avoid that. And even we heard a little bit in the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, they have a couple of weird caveats that are baked in that kind of cause some of the bureaucracy and other challenges. You might want the equity kind of portion baked in, but you got to be careful. You want to give yourself some flexibility because otherwise it becomes, we're dependent on an outside entity. So questions?
All right, questions for
Right.
John and Connor. Great presentations.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all for sitting for all of our conversations.
Yeah.
Next.
Was there any conversation that we had at the table, since you do this every day, that you think you have some input on that might be helpful?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, even with the criteria, and we can make this objective, is that I always like to have a little pressure valve, even with objective. Like we come to you all with our CMAQ recommendations, and that's what it is. We are making recommendations based on the criteria we had previously established. And we bring those to you. You also have to say, even with CPT, if you really think another project will enable that, I guess you could say pull up item, you don't want to completely throw out all the recommendations. If it's bad recommendations, throw them out by all means. But you should always have that little valve that allows a little bit of rebalancing depending on the needs. If the scoring isn't working right, even in that point in time, go back and revise it. That's okay. I don't want to be locked into a better methodology.
Okay, that's helpful. All right.
Can we do the next one? The last presentation, frankly, if time is a problem, we can scrap because it just answers your question. I'll give you a sentence that will avoid the whole presentation. But the C one, yes, the C one we should really do because that's what explains this.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we, last meeting, we did kind of a round on distribution.
Right.
Can we do another poll on
Sure.
the distribution, just so we know what, if we're looking at this, what the likelihood of different ones.
Anybody opposed to that? And if you're not ready to even say a number, you could say pass. So,
Shall we do the
Wait a minute, hold on.
presentation and then
Yep.
we can do that?
yep, sure.
Did you ask?
Let's
I
kick
wanna
off,
take.
John.
Yeah.
All right, in front of you is basically a model of expected income and revenue. This is built upon the Mary Washington model by the Business Department. He provided this for us last fall. Since then, and he's pulling sources from your localities and jurisdictions as well as other data. So we're pulling real data as much as we can here. Since then, we have modified it a little bit to make it function. So we're using market splits and shares based on where the income is coming in. We have a clawback for the King George, Caroline counties, because currently they're contributing their wholesale fuels tax. It goes into the district grant pot that they then have to apply through Smart Scale to get back. For FAMPO jurisdictions, that's already going to the VRE fund, and they get whatever is not used back to them. We are actually building this in that we can estimate what the input is and try to pull that back as a part of the local share. And we just put in updates. We've modified it because his original model was for a 5-year period ending in 2028. We built it to match the 6-year improvement plan. So we built it out a little bit further. We have newer data from that. We've adjusted the populations based on census, Walton Cooper, our own FAMPO internal predictions. We split that up into percentage and also growth rates. So, model input includes the transit occupancy tax, actually should say recordation tax, a half-cent, aka a 0.5% sales tax, and distributed the $15 million state allocation based on population. So, recordation, transit occupancy, and sales tax is based on local, where it's collected within the model. And we updated, and we'll do that because I think a few jurisdictions have recently updated their transit occupancy tax. So we've updated since the original model, and we've built that in. So we are also going to use future years based on jurisdiction growth, not just region-wide growth applied. So.
I have a question real quick.
Sure.
I'm sorry. So you're saying that the grantor's tax, you're saying is 6 cents per 100, right?
Yes.
And transient occupancy, what are you?
So
assuming?
1%, sorry. Yeah, it's at the top,
1%?
it's not there. I realize I missed that one.
And then the 0.5,
It's 0.005 for a
A half cent.
half-cent
Half-
dollars.
Hello.
Thank you.
half cent on the sales tax. Those are that's the,
The assumptions, right?
okay.
And transit occupancy, that's a tax base added on what we already tax.
Transient occupancy is based on adding an additional percent to your existing transit occupancy.
Okay,
So
that's what I'm
if
at.
you're at a 5% transit occupancy, we can bump it up to 6%.
Okay.
So. And this is for King George, and this is how we went through and validated the fuel model.
This is incredibly difficult to do, and I just want to congratulate John and Connor for doing this. This is rough. It's very hard to work this out, but they've given you an estimate. We're calling it an estimate because it's a future estimate, and you know what the future is like, right?
Yeah.
COVID can happen, and the numbers are all rubbish. So, but well done.
We did our projections, and then since we had actual revenue collected in Powhatan County, which is a pretty good example for King George, and then matched it, and we're within about they pull in 1.3 million for this. I think our estimates for Caroline County being on Interstate 95 is closer to 1.7. King George is like 1.2. We're seeing very similar results as a result. So that's the reason why we felt confident saying this is a likely clawback for that, because our projections say look one way, we compared it to a similar county, it's within a period of confidence. So that's what we're presenting for. But ask more questions.
No, I have one question because I should know this, but I don't. So the 1.2 that we get back, what is that is put towards our smart scale or what?
Right now, it goes into the statewide district grant funding pot. So when you apply at the district grant level for the smart scale, all the taxes that are outside of an RTA or transit authority are going into that pot. So if you're in an RTA like Powhatan, they get that money
Well,
back.
I have just a suggestion to so we can circulate this to folks. Could you add that to the slide? So that's an explanation, because, so could you
Okay,
distribute it?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Just that explanation of what.
Perfect. Yeah, we can do that.
You're punching above your weight, it looks
Yeah.
like, for the population size, right? They're punching above their weight.
Yeah, and actually, when we get, 'cause what we can do is we can actually pull retail sales numbers for gasoline stations within each of the jurisdictions. What we can't separate is the Sheetz and the Wawas who do store tax versus what they're selling in wholesale. We can kind of get an idea of their total activity, like comparatively, because surprisingly enough, like King George and Caroline County are almost per store location and battling at the same amount as say Stafford and Spotsylvania.
And I know the two Sheets we have are one of the top producers in the Sheets franchise.
Yeah.
They're like the top 10.
Better get that money back, wow.
So we, in our projections.
Yeah,
you can
there
see
we go.
Final year, we kind of capped King George so we would not exceed Powhatan County. We just capped it because that was, we were very comfortable in what we were able to pull from their data as being a good cap. So you'll see kind of the 29-30 kind of stops because we capped it there.
They're just being conservative.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, please see your handout. On the top level, don't look at this. This is only something I can see and Ian jokes about it. The most important one is 2005. You can see how much money a RTA at 20 or at a 50-50 split will pull in each one of these. And then finally, the bottom is the regional. So 50% into the regional authority. If you want to see all these
Don,
numbers,
say that again.
Yeah.
They need to all hear
Yeah,
that last
say
sentence.
that again. Where is the number that's going into the regional?
it is the
25 million.
one that's right above the darker line.
25, 389, 945 on a 50-50
Okay.
split.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
when you move from the 50-50 split, you'll see that number changes. So page 2.
Now 5 million.
Each locality is, that's how much they're putting in, the
So that's how
estimate.
much you're getting back.
That's how much you're getting back.
So-
Oh, with the
Right there.
50-50, okay.
In this case, you can see
I'm just
Which
trying to
are-
understand it.
the various entities that are, I would say, sales tax importers and sales tax importers, which you can compare to the population split too, so.
See,
So-
20.
A lot. right?
Yes.
I've sat here looking at it ahead of time, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Madam Chair. I said-
Sure.
And so what I'm looking at, to clarify, so just above the solid bar is the region.
The region is
Totals.
right here.
So we have the population first, then we have the local total
The local total
And you can
is
see this
all
for
of
each of the
these added up into that.
into that,
Yeah.
okay? And then we have the state allocation,
The state
which is what
allocation.
will go to the regional.
Yes, well, no, the state allocation is the $15 million
total.
that is being given to the region. And
Okay.
we split it by population.
The
Okay.
local total is then, it's everything,
Is the local total from that state?
If it has a state allocation, it's included.
all the other
Okay.
columns add up to the local total.
Yeah.
Yes, but the key thing you must
Oh, got it.
understand is that the bottom line in each chunk
Mhm.
across
It's for the
is
region.
not.
Yeah.
Is not the total of the numbers above it.
Yeah.
The one is, the bottom line goes into the regional part and all the other lines go to you in your local part.
That's
So
very
the,
helpful.
the bottom line is not the total, because when you turn over the page, you'll see it doesn't add up, because it's not the total.
Okay, and where this is for 50-50 scenario.
Mhm.
Okay, and we'll go through.
So we could, if you're trying to figure out how much money we have for our RTA, technically you could take the local total and move
Yes.
it as the last column. That's a collection of all the numbers. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I
Now, here's the one after. I have
Just hang on, we got.
just clarification, and I'm sorry, I'm being dense on this.
No,
So if we
I
look
got
at
it wrong.
Spotsylvania County, the local total is 10 million, right?
Yes,
So that's
straight back to you.
what would go straight back to us from this in a 50-50 split, but the state allocation is 2,000,007, right?
That's included in that.
That's oh, this is the total.
The total, and
Okay.
everything else is a subcomponent.
So
Okay.
pretend like the column is.
Start at the right.
A column's.
Okay.
Yeah, if you
start at the
right and you add to the left.
Okay. So but you're,
Population.
It was bottom line up front. I get what you were trying to do.
Trying to make us happy at
That's
the
right,
moment.
right,
That's what, you know,
but
give
you're,
us the good news, right?
so your
first.
transient occupancy tax, that is directly, you're collecting that from your
Jurisdiction.
from, okay. And your recordation tax is from that,
Jurisdiction.
and your retail tax is from that, right? So what you're getting, cause aren't you, I mean, all right, this is additional taxes. And then the state, by doing those three things, the state is giving you 2.7 million more.
Yes.
Okay,
So when John is finished, and I'm hoping he's going to carry on explaining, ultimately what this group here around this table should do is first you pick one of the 3 pages and you say that's the split we want. So whichever page you pick will give you the split. So if you want the 50-50, you pick the front page. If you want 60-40, you pick page 2. And if you want 70-30, you pick the blue page 3. So that tells you which split. And then the second decision you have to take is that you then have to decide which of these taxes you want to put in the package. And when you make those 2 decisions, we'll give you the number that you're going to get. Because the block tells you what number you're going to get. And so, but pick a page, which you can do after discussing with your jurisdictions, or however you want to do it, show of hands now, or, you know, call the Pope, or whatever method you want to use. You pick a page.
He's sick of hearing.
I
numbers.
just talked.
There you go. So you pick a page, when you all agree, you pick a page,
Wait.
and then you pick which vertical columns, and it needs to be more than one, otherwise we'll waste all of our time and energy and get no money. So you need to pick a couple of the vertical columns on one page, and that becomes your RTA.
Yep.
So it's all
So
done.
whatever we take, whatever column is removed
You
affects
lose
our
that amount of
local,
money.
our
Yes.
local total.
Correct.
Yeah.
So right now you've got everything baked in there.
Well, we don't have a gas tax in the
You know,
FAMPO
though.
jurisdiction.
Right, no
No.
gas tax,
Oh,
because
they're
we
gonna
pretty
go
much
backwards.
said
I had
that's
asked more.
useless.
But I'm not stopping you doing it. If you want it, you can. do it.
Right, no,
Well, you know, that Bucky's,
right.
100 and
Bucky,
some pumps.
Yeah.
So does everyone understand that?
Everyone needs
Yeah.
a
The
Bucky.
process is,
This is kind of the
Everyone
sheet
needs
we've
a
all been
Buc-ee's.
waiting for. This is
Yeah.
why we come to these meetings every month, because we wanted to see this.
and this is a lot of work, and we thank
You
them.
need a life mag.
But you pick a page, and then you pick the vertical columns that you want, and then you have the answer, right?
Okay, yep.
Then you
Long story
start.
short,
Done.
for each 10% increase, so from
What's your-
50-50 to 60-40, the regional pot grows slightly more than 5 million. If you go from 60-40 to 70-30, again, you have about another 5 million jump, and then it's kind of taken out proportionally by jurisdiction, who loses kind of it based on their activity.
And frankly, on this issue, staff have no opinion.
Yeah, okay, good
We
answer.
will do whatever it is you want.
All right.
Okay, Monica,
Yeah, if I can just kind of throw this out there before we poll, and we've kind of had the discussion previously. I think a lot of us were around the 60-40. I wanted to do more regionally, but with the discussion that we could put additional dollars in from the local, I think the 60-40 would still be appropriate, because we can always put additional monies into those regional projects if we wanted to. So that's just where I'm.
okay, Drew.
I don't know who to ask the question, but how does this split, is it effective when Kalahari and Amazon come online and we're putting in a disproportionate contribution to things?
So
Already our retail is higher than.
okay,
Yeah.
like, for example, this model does quietly assume that Stafford's actually slowly decreasing the gap based on this. So right now, the model does have like, it's razor thin, but that's kind of what it's telling us. As you grow, your proportions stay equal. So all of a sudden, if your sales tax goes up by $1 million, there'll be 60-40 split by whatever that increase is. So if it's 60-40, that means $600,000 into the regional, $400,000 into the local pot. But it stays within your jurisdiction for that local item. So if one jurisdiction grows a little and another one grows a lot, they're still keeping the same relative scale between the two. It's just what's going into it depends on how much is going into the regional pot for how it gets redistributed and who's the donor and donee.
Yeah, so if your county opens 100 new stores and there's 100 times more sales tax, your local portion climbs massively in proportion with that.
But it would anyways. It would anyways without the RTA.
Well, without the RTA, you would
Wouldn't be
get,
contributing it to
Well,
the,
you would have
you
to
would
increase
get what you, yes, you would get what you're getting now.
yeah.
This is increasing the sales tax, so this portion you don't.
Oh, I see. I got you. All right,
So
sorry.
Drew, help me
Yeah.
understand what you said about the data centers creating more sales tax. Are you talking about around it? Because it's not the servers. and-
Right. I did kind of mix that up, didn't I?
Yeah, it's personal property.
Yeah.
or not personal, yeah.
Not personal
Not
property,
what we're talking
And
about.
that doesn't come, personal
Right,
property.
yeah, data
doesn't come
center is
in.
like Kalahari, for example. That'd probably be a
Okay,
better
a
example.
Kalahari.
Sales
tax. That's a different one. Yeah.
Okay, Kathy?
So before we take the poll, I'm gonna throw one thing out. There's if we're voting, it needs to be 2 from each locality.
So we're not
Because
voting.
there's,
We're not voting.
We're not
this is a
voting,
poll.
just a poll.
well, I mean, even for the poll, because the vote's weighted if there's more.
This
people
is
from-
just an
No, it's
indication.
just an
It means
indication.
absolutely
We know
nothing.
that there's only two
Thumb
doing
up or thumb
Maryland.
down kind of.
You- What we did at the last meeting is everybody just went around and it
Okay.
was a
Right.
poll. It was, what's your pulse on the split right now?
I got one question. We're gonna do that.
Chairperson, so
What's the average, Ian, you might know this, on $30 million of RTA money, what can we leverage that to on average? Is that $300 million or is it
Well,
$150 million?
I'll state it slightly differently. For all of the federal grants, if you're gonna apply for your big projects, you have to put in a 20% local match. So if you don't have the 20% local match, you don't get any federal money. So it's 20%. So if you, yes.
I mean, that's
Yeah, I appreciate that.
kind of.
Okay,
Thinking about.
The Harrison Road connector is how much?
So
Just so that we
So
understand.
one of my staff members says 77 million, but I think that's a low
That's not
bar.
a VDOT number.
that is low.
Because I think,
All
in
dirt.
my personal view, I think that the takings of land to fix it are gonna be a little more expensive than land in Caroline. So I think the number 77 is too low. I think you're talking 100 million, but that's, I don't have math to show you that. The math says 77, but I'm saying that the
Okay.
land is gonna cost.
Got it. John, do you have more?
No, this is it. So I need to
Okay,
know,
okay.
based on the poll, because Ian's already told me to reduce my spreadsheets, and this is it reduced.
Gotcha.
You
So,
Yeah, this is a fair bones.
the only thing about reducing your spreadsheets is all the other people in our jurisdictions haven't seen this, so this is kind of beneficial. So I kind of don't wanna reduce it right now.
So by all means, show this to all your politicians. The trouble is, if the public starts messing with this, you're gonna have to answer 1,000 questions because they don't have the briefing. So by all means, give every politician a copy of this.
Politician.
Every elected.
Public servant, please.
Give every elected,
Leader.
give every elected official
Right.
this opinion, you want this. But just, when it goes to the public, they'll come with and all these things you asked, times that by 1 million is what they're gonna ask. in their
Yeah, we
job.
live that life every day, you know.
Oh, every day.
The poll.
Yeah, so we,
We haven't
so
started yet.
yeah, I hadn't started it. Okay, did you have a question, Deontay?
No,
Okay,
I've been a little distracted, so I'm sorry.
it's okay.
2 deputies assaulted.
Oh,
That they're okay, minor injuries, but, so that's what's going on.
Oh.
But I did not
That's
have
why
a
I went
question.
around the table to explain the
Yeah,
chart
she was
to them
trying to
really
catch
quick.
you.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Big picture comment.
Okay, we can't really,
Spotty people.
okay, but you can't really take any more feedback from, we can entertain you after the fact, okay? All right, thanks. Okay, I'll start here with Lori.
50-50.
50-50.
50-50.
70-30.
60-40.
50-50.
60-40.
60-40. I was 70-30, I'll just.
Okay, wait a minute.
I'm,
Agree twice in a row, Chris?
I'm
You only get so much in one night, Jason.
I'm either 70-30 or 60-40. I'm not sure. I'm definitely not a 50-50.
If I can say, because I
Yeah.
think that it gives the freedom for the locality to then choose, is this project that I'm putting forward worth my local match or local money to add to it to get it done? Is it important for me? Or will I let it ride and use that local money to then do other things? It really gives, I think, the localities more freedom that way. 50-50, I think, is a little low. That's,
Yeah.
but I'd be fine with 50-50.
So
Okay.
what were
So that's a vote 50-50, Christian.
On the winning side, yes.
Will, you had
Winning
something?
side was 60-40, but I see it's.
Oh, I'm still at 60-40, but
See,
I'm
there we go.
I'm just saying I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, I'm in the middle. Okay, Will?
I mean, this is a question that can't be answered tonight, and I know it's probably a lot of work for you guys, but I find myself wondering, with these different splits and these different models we're looking to, like, what does the sort of split of project funded mean?
Split of what?
Particularly modes, right? What's the modal split of projects funded? Because, I'm thinking about myself and what I hear from my constituents and what we face in the city, right? Is that we're looking much more at sort of like ped improvements, transit improvements, that kind of thing, right? Because we don't have a lot of room to be building a whole lot of new extra roads in the city. So that's not what we're going to be looking for, at least with our local.
You see, the city's gonna bring in more money than Caroline and King George, but they're gonna get less projects because they're doing cheap projects. So you're gonna get their money.
Yeah, pound for pound, no one can compare to the city.
Okay, I wasn't gonna say that.
I'll say it. Yeah, do the numbers.
20 years from now, let's have that discussion. Exhausted all your opportunities.
So
I guess for me,
So the answer.
I should
There is an answer. The answer to the question is, how long is a piece of string? Because you can make up those splits however you want.
I guess my question is, what I'm thinking about splits is, from selfishly from the perspective of what our constituents deal with is, is a 50-50 split going to better give the city the elbow room it needs to make sure that at least some of that money is carved out for projects that aren't giant road projects? Or is a 70-30 split going to better help us achieve, what I think our constituents want, right? Which is transportation improvements that aren't necessarily large, high capacity roads.
So the answer is, whatever you put in your scoring methodology will produce one or other of those outcomes.
Right.
So it's those percentages that John was showing you earlier.
Right, that matter.
Do you give 30% to congestion or 50% to congestion or 90% to congestion? That will affect whether all the roads get the money or the bike ped gets the money.
Because congestion only means cars.
So exactly, mostly. So those
Congestion is the-
percentages will produce the answer you're looking for.
Right, okay.
That's gonna be where the real rub is, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, Monica?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quick, kind of my reasoning for being at the 60-40 is, we had discussed it before and it made sense to me, but I think going down to a 50-50 kind of takes away that effort for the regionalism. So I really would like for that to be a larger portion because Transportation Authority. So having the emphasis on that, I think is good, but not going all the way to the 30, because I do want to leave room for the localities to discern if we do want to give additional monies or not, some of those projects for the regional ones. So that's just my reasoning.
Well said.
Kathy, I have to say, and this is me being a total politician, so you can all mock me afterwards, but I just have to say that you've already got an improvement to what you had last time. Right?
So there you go. Okay, Drew?
It's getting better.
Just for context, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe we less than that we as a county have 20% match. Some of the other localities don't. So that's why 50-50 is probably more attractive to us. That makes sense?
Because you have the ability to provide the 20% match, they're saying, oh, okay.
So it's not like,
Right.
we're holding more of our own money at 50-50 because we can match.
Leverage it for yourself.
Because that number.
That makes sense.
But you could shift some of your local projects onto the RTA that are big.
That's true.
So you could shift more Harrison Road connected type projects, widening Harrison Road. You could shift it to the RTA rather than being on your balance sheet, which would, and I pity Ms. Vanush isn't here because that could free up some of your money for education because the RTA is paying for the roads.
I have a
Or something
question just for the city of Fredericksburg. With their 50, they could do their bike ped project,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
wanted
of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They can
Just
do
grant money.
whatever they
yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that,
For us.
And did you remember the MBTA lady said you can also fund staff positions with that money? So if you need a transportation planner
which we don't
in
have.
somewhere, in George County, you don't have to find the money out of your property taxes. You can take the money from the RTA, the 50% or 60% or 40%, or whatever the number is, and you can employ a full-time transportation planner just for you.
Mhm.
And you can legally use that money to fund that salary so that they can do the planning for you to be able to have whatever projects you
Can
want.
they get their comp plan done with that too?
Maybe the transportation chapter, but I wouldn't say you could pay the whole complement.
I
Well,
have
that's
one
part,
other
we don't have that
question.
Lori?
chapter.
One
Then we're
other
gonna wrap
question,
up.
yeah, so, the transient occupancy tax, there is a maximum that you can go to, correct?
Yes, I think it's 9.
So if you're already there, that's a no-go.
That's a question sometimes.
We're
I
not
can't
already
answer.
there.
I
That's a
think we're.
question.
I think we're
Transit.
already there, aren't
That's,
we?
I think you're,
Transit
I think you're,
occupancy tax.
I
I think you're at 8 and I think this might be 8.5, so we can fit in one more percent.
Okay,
But don't quote me, I'll find out for you. I can't always off the top of my head answer.
I'll ask if where we are. I thought we were bumping right up against the max.
If you've got
The city and y'all are, and I don't remember who's at max and who isn't right off the top of the head.
I think y'all actually might be a point ahead of us.
Yes, I think we're 1 point below, 1 point.
They're saying 9.
So I think we've already met that. I almost
But-
want to say we did last year.
But remember, the same people, the same people, the same people who are gonna vote this into being are the
Yeah,
people who
exactly.
created that
Is that-
legislation in the
Is
first
that what you
place.
want to be seconding?
So they can actually also be the ones who waive that cap.
Oh, so they could increase the
Be-
TOT for
because
us
they're
if
the
they
ones who voted.
wanted them.
Yes.
Organic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like-
Oh, yeah.
Just wait for that moratorium to run out.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Big question. Yeah, no, I
Get everybody.
agree. It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
That-
And then we're at this.
All right,
One last question.
I don't have any more questions. I just want to really thank everybody. We've been here almost 3 hours. I feel like this has been very productive. This is the conversation that we need to have. And the banter back and forth and what if, all these what ifs, all the, it's just all been very healthy conversation. Yes, great,
And
sure.
thank you to staff too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
You sit here and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And,
Appreciate y'all.
yeah.
Can I set another meeting date, Madam Chair?
Yes, we were gonna set it for April. It typically is the last Thursday,
My guess is that you probably only need one more information.
maybe one more.
One more meeting to get data, because the last conversation you all should have is that final one that we've been avoiding, which is which taxes should you include?
Right.
And we were waiting to hear whether the governor's 1% sales tax was gonna be on or off, and it looks like it's been canned.
Oh, really?
So that therefore means we don't have to worry about that 1%.
You mean he's vetoed it? Wow.
Well, we will find out by the 17th of
Yeah,
April.
I don't think
whether-
it's been canned
whether it's-
yet.
I was tracking it. I didn't see anything today.
No, he hasn't spoken, but the point is that it's been taken out of the proposed legislation, so he would have to try and get it back in again. So he can
Okay.
propose it, but he's got to convince at least 50% of the House and the Senate to
Wait a
support
minute,
him.
no, they all voted
They
on
voted
it.
for
They
it.
all voted for
It
it.
had some.
The Senate and the House voted for the 1%.
Sorry, we're talking about two different 1%.
We're talking about.
We're talking
The
about for
school
school
one-
construction.
Passed.
Okay.
The one.
Oh, he signed it?
The general sales, no, wait, just slow down,
Sorry, go.
slow down, one thing at a time.
He's talking about something else.
So the governor, in his budget, said that he wants an additional 1% sales tax so that he can reduce the income tax,
Oh, right,
basically.
right.
That was canned
Oh,
by the
yeah,
House.
all right.
And but it was important to us to know that because we didn't want to use any 1% on top of the sales tax. That would have been ridiculous. However, we think there's now some space because that thing has been removed. So there's now a possibility to have a small, maybe 0.5% sales tax on this one, because we don't also have the 1% that the governor wanted, which seems to have been canned.
Sort of been 2%.
Yeah.
Or 1.5.
On that, the
But now it'll be
schools
one
is
and a half.
still.
No, it'd be
That's
one.
still right.
It'd be a half.
there.
The
Yeah,
schools
he
one
has
is
a
still
fee
there,
too.
but it
But that's
isn't.
optional.
Right. Yes, and you don't have to have the full 1%. You could say 0.5% for schools and 0.5% for the
Cause
RTA,
it's up to.
because it's up to.
That's referendum.
So you would all need to massage that however
Well,
you
we
want
need
to.
1% in Stafford. Okay, so anyway, okay, any last comments from anybody? Oh, yeah, the 25th, thank you. And I want to thank you guys for being here too. And for, listening to this long conversation and,
Is the 25th
It's
agreed to,
important.
or are you still discussing?
Monday?
We're gonna do back to back?
25th,
That's a Thursday.
the Thursday.
I'm on the wrong.
I would prefer that to the 18th.
Yes.
The two
Oh, I'm sorry.
FAMPO meetings in 1 week are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do the 18th, but it seems like this meeting always falls on the last week,
It does.
the last Thursday.
So the 25th
At
of
6.
April at 6. And,
Two.
and if you want another one after that, that's fine, but we think that you're gonna run out of new topics, because by then, if you discuss the taxes next time, then basically you just have to start voting, right?
At some point, we just need
There's
to,
nothing left to say
Yeah.
after that. What else do we discuss?
Well, that's when we need to get our own boards
Sure,
on
but we don't have
board.
anything to present.
Well,
What else
I
can
will-
we tell you about?
Because for a big issue like this, our board needs, in my mind, our board needs to give the FAMPO representatives direction on what they want us to do.
Mhm.
I'm not, there are a lot of boards and regional things and committees that we sit on, but for something as significant as this, I feel, I mean, Monica, you can weigh in, but I'm not going out on a limb and making a decision for my board.
No.
They have to weigh in on that.
So, Madam Chair, if
Yes.
really quick, so I think after our next meeting, if we can come to some general consensus of what this would look like and be able to take that to our boards, and then after that, we can consider voting.
Yeah.
On FAMPO, so I think there should be some kind of a presentation, so the boards can fully understand.
Yeah.
And council can fully understand what we're.
No, I agree with that.
If
We
next
can
time,
come to each of the.
if next time you give us some sort of consensus on what you can live with, we'll put it together, package it, and then you have the same pack. All of you have the same pack to take to your board.
Okay.
But remember, you need to come to that meeting and say, hey, I think it should be X. Because otherwise you push it back on us, and I mean, if you want me to tell you how to do it, I'll tell you, but that's not my place, right?
Can we just do like this committee would kind of recommend for something for Ian to the boards to present in the council?
Yeah, after budget
So,
season.
so you need to give us a recommendation next time, and whatever that recommendation is, you can say, I don't want any of this, or whatever, that's up to
And
you.
we need to know if localities can opt out too.
Well, I don't know if you just opt out, you
Where-
just don't opt in.
Where we're working
But we could
towards,
still be pushed in.
where we're working towards, I think, right, you're all closer to this than I am, but where I think we're working towards is us making a recommendation to the General Assembly. We can't make it happen or not make it happen, because we don't have the power. They have to tax people, we're not allowed to tax people. All we're doing is making a recommendation. Then they take the recommendation, or they tear it up and say, oh, we got this other idea, right? We don't have the power. But I think that a recommendation from us would carry at least some weight. Because it's not.
But if one locality wants to not be part of this,
Well,
then
so when we make a recommendation, our recommendation needs to say whatever we think should be done. And if our recommendation says everybody except King George, then that's what we put in our recommendation,
And
right?
when I said push, it could be that, I'm just gonna give an example. I could support it, but you go back to my board and they could all say no.
right.
So, you know
Right,
what I mean?
Right.
And then the legislature could say, well, too bad, you're in.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
That's-
So
Right.
that's what I meant by push.
That's
Right.
very true, and I
Mhm.
think that they're going to come up with a proposal if we don't. So my suggestion is, whatever you want next time, you sort of start to say, I want this and I don't want that, and we make a list. I'm happy to put it together for you, but at the end of the day, it's your list, it's not my list. I've given you all the options I can think of. And now you need to talk to each other and argue with each other, and hopefully don't fight with each other, and decide which are the ones. I'll put them in the documents, I'll put the supporting documents. Make it as easy to read as possible, because the further you get away from this route, the explanations aren't there, so you've got to try and simplify it for folks to.
So,
Yes.
so can I, I'm gonna throw out an idea and you all can weigh in and see, tell me if you think this would be, workable and if it would benefit anybody. If we looked at, 5 projects that we have for the next fiscal year, or projects that are out there. Could we do a sampling of like a 60-40 with these different taxes and how those projects would fare for our RTA?
Oh, like what a match would,
Yeah,
Like-
well, I'd like to look at the kind of the mathematical equation and say, okay, what project do you have? And
Give some vision to.
yeah,
what
I
we're
just,
accomplish.
yeah, exactly. I-
Concrete and not abstract.
So we.
Right,
So
exactly.
do you
Thank
all
you.
remember Connor's map?
Yes.
With the,
Uh-huh.
was it 11 projects?
Mhm.
So that was, you know, you keep putting us on the spot because we don't have a vote, but you say to us, give us a set of projects. So we gave you a set of projects. Now you need to say back to us, okay, we want numbers 1, 2, but not 4. We'll massage that to whatever you want.
I think if I can rephrase,
Sure.
please, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think what she's asking for is instead of not picking the projects for the sake of picking the projects, but giving an example of if we were to do this project, which we may not do, this is what it would look like with RTA funding at 50%, with 60%, with 70%, and this is the type of match that we could theoretically receive. And so then that's
Right, and how would these projects weigh and how much more quickly could we get these projects done?
at 50, 60, 70.
Right,
Madam Chair, could I make a suggestion? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Could I just make a suggestion to that? Could you maybe, I know there was a long list of hypothetical projects, and so maybe if you just picked one per locality for those
that's what I
examples.
said.
Sounds like a lot.
Easy, we have a study.
Well, the one that King George, can King George County give me a project to include? Because we don't want to prescribe to you. What project do you want me to copy?
Sully, what would you say? I have suggestion. Indian Town in 206.
Yeah. I'll take 6.
Mm-hmm.
What is the project? You want to widen the road? Is it
We have a lot of crashes there.
what is it you want to do there?
We don't have a study to say, we've heard roundabout, we've heard red light, you know what I
I
mean?
mean,
But
funding a study is easy, then I don't need a project. I'm just gonna give you a bunch of money for a study. But if you know what infrastructure you want, then I can. cost
see, that's
that.
hard to say because, you know,
Okay, so we'll fund a study for you.
You go bigger because traffic light will fix that. It's an intersection.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't say off the top because we have never, only 301 has had a study.
Wow.
Maybe a pipeline study on 206 from 301 all the way down to 3. And they give you multiple projects.
Mhm. I mean, the big thing out there that's always been said is a bypass away from the center of town. Especially now that there's supposed to be no through trucks on 206. How do you get all that traffic off that small little 2-lane?
So if the two of you could email me a project, then I'll put it into this thing,
Okay.
because I don't want to prescribe to what your project should be.
One of the things, you gave us a list of sample projects a while back. I forget when that was, but one that was in there was widening, and straightening at 218, and it was estimated to
80 million.
be 80 million. I mean, that seems like a huge price tag, but that road is.
The only problem is you're gonna upset a lot of people with eminent domain.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at least for numbers, it kind of works for the.
Yes, it is.
If I can make a suggestion, if you all just focus on being able to get the funding for the study, so you know what you can do.
That's why I said we gotta study. That's,
That you don't have, I think that would be a big thing to focus on.
You know, and that might be a project, the 80 million
In-town road,
on White Oak Road that
610.
may not rise up.
I'm only
Right.
saying the study and like you said, transportation plan, because you really
Yeah.
can't figure out
Yeah.
anything without the study because
Yeah.
you don't have one.
Okay, fine.
Do you know
All
what I mean?
right. Okay, anything else? Thank you for your huge investment of time, energy, and your brain power.
We will see you for the final meeting next month.
Party at Jason's.
Thank you, staff.
Oh.
Babe,
Actually, I'll save that for you.
Yes.
you don't have that.
Combined a crystal not legal.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not even